Chapter 1670. In the secret storehouse's stone room. Don't worry. Faced with the empty spirit mouse's reminder, Howren also recalled how he had been hunted down by the natives of the Death Swamp in his previous life. He had no choice but to hide in the excrement of exotic beasts in humiliation. In the end, he was lucky enough to escape the pursuit of the natives. His heart immediately burned with rage, but then he quickly calmed the burning anger in his heart. After calmly putting away the second stage, first-grade eternal creation pill, he shook his head and gestured. Pallas forcibly suppressed his deep accumulation and did not let his realm break through to the limit. He strived to achieve the plan of rebirth of his physique so that Howren could find a way to continuously break through his potential and accumulation. The tens of thousands of black and white wings left behind by the ancient god and demon clans, especially the hundreds of black and white wings above the peak of the seven-stage Emperor Wu realm, together with the Yin-Yang Strange Fire's heaven-defying method of engulfing and separating, gave him the hope of breaking through to the high level of Emperor Wu in a short period of time. The several hundred void fruits of different colors, especially the 7-colored, 8-colored, and 9-colored void fruits, not only allowed him to comprehend the power of the 12 auxiliary laws he needed to comprehend the laws of space, but he could also continue to create even more law martial skills that were suitable for him. In the end, through the created law of martial techniques, he could further unlock the potential of his talent and aptitude, and in turn continue to improve his accumulation. Therefore, the second stage, first-grade eternal creation pill was not used to build the divine body of the martial god realm, but a breakthrough to the perfect 10th stage Emperor Wu realm, which he did not have much confidence in after losing the Thaling. After taking a deep breath and calming his slightly excited emotions, Howren looked at the second treasure on the iron shelf, a square box. He mobilized his divine thought to try to see if he could enter the box. He found that the box made of special materials had the powerful effect of blocking divine thought. Even if he used the divine thought of Emperor Wu at the peak of the third stage, he could not penetrate the defense of the box. Helpless, he could only reach out to the top of the box and use the innate divination technique to sense it. After having a premonition that there was no danger in the box, he took out a high-grade Saint Stage sword from the storage ring and gently opened a gap in the box. Then, a stream of pure spirit chi containing a special concept instantly emerged from the box, making Howren and empty spirit mouse's eyes could not help but light up. They suddenly opened the box with force. There were 5 spirit chi's heart. There were 5 watermelon-sized, completely transparent spirit stones. First stage, first-grade spirit stones. First stage, first-grade immortal stones. After exchanging a glance with each other, Howren and the void spirit mouse excitedly shouted out the origins of the 5 watermelon-sized spirit stones in the box. Although rank 1 grade 1 spiritual stones could not be compared to spiritual herbs that could produce intelligence and temporarily transform, the spiritual energy contained in the spiritual stones was the best energy to break through to the martial emperor and demigod realm. 5 first-grade spirit stones could completely satisfy a powerful expert who had just entered the Emperor Wu realm and raise his cultivation to the peak of the 7th-stage Emperor Wu realm in a short time. The Eternal Creation Pill was a supreme spirit pill for the physical body grade. The first stage first-grade spirit stones were supreme spirit stones for the Yuan, Li, and Soul Force realms. Originally, he did not have much confidence in breaking through to the peak of the 10th-stage Emperor Wu realm, but with the 5 first-stage first-grade spirit stones, his confidence in breaking through to the peak of the 10th stage immediately increased to 50%. Carefully closing the box, Howren joyfully put away the box and looked at the third treasure on the iron shelf, a stone box made of starlight stone. The power of the stars was a type of spirit chi between heaven and earth that was far superior to the spirit chi of heaven and earth. It was also the most suitable energy for sealing demonic beasts. Therefore, facing the stone box made of starlight stone, Howren did not act rashly and directly opened the stone box. He continued to use his divine sense and techniques to check whether there was any danger in the sealed stone box. Fortunately, Starlight Stone was only used to make Emperor Realm and Saint Realm weapons. It did not have the powerful effect of blocking divine sense. In the end, a trace of divine sense successfully entered the stone box. Howard felt his breathing quicken when his divine sense saw the star-like bead in the stone box. His divine sense quickly withdrew from the stone box and reached out to open the stone box. Then, using his eyes and divine sense, he carefully observed the bead that was emitting a faint spirit chi. Howard, what kind of treasure is this? The empty spirit mouse circled around the bead in the stone box. Although it was certain that this was a very precious treasure, it did not know the specific origin of this bead and its effects. The 9-star spirit bead, Howard explained excitedly. In the distant starry sky, the most common constellations that could be seen with the naked eye and would appear several times a year were the Big Dipper. They were the Greed, Jumin, Lutsuan, Wenxiu, Lianjin, Wuxiu, and Pajuan. However, there were two other stars that rarely appeared next to the Big Dipper. They were the Minister of the Right and the Minister of the Left. The stars in the sky were not fixed. Instead, they moved according to a certain trajectory. Therefore, every 30 million years, the Big Dipper, the Minister of the Right, and the Minister of the Left would form a straight line. The moment the 9 stars formed a straight line, the dazzling starlight from the 9 stars would condense into a bead that contained 9 types of pure spirit chi. This bead was the 9-star spirit bead. Back then, Fowling had deliberately crafted a top-grade defensive instrument for Qin Ling Fei. Now that the 9-star bead had successfully become a low-grade exalt, it was based on the idea of the 9-star alignment. At the same time, when he gave the 9-star bead to Qin Ling Fei, Fowling had regretfully mentioned that the 9-star spirit bead could be used as the core of the instrument. Then, not only would the 9-star bead have the hope of becoming a divine instrument, it would also be able to constantly absorb the pure spirit chi of the stars to improve Qin Ling Fei's cultivation and strength. This kind of improvement in cultivation and strength was not at all inferior to the effect of using a 5th-grade upper spirit vein to cultivate. However, the 9-star spirit bead that only appeared once every 30 million years was too rare and precious. Even Fowling, who had existed since the beginning of time, had only seen it twice. However, Howard's excitement quickly cooled when he remembered that he was not proficient in the art of crafting. He was also worried about handing over the 9-star bead and the 9-star spirit bead to a craftsman from the crafting school. For the first time, he thought of looking for the Fowling. Of course, thoughts were just thoughts. Whether or not he would put them into action in the end, he was still unable to put down his pride and dignity. Chapter 1671. In the stone room of the secret storehouse, Howard leaned close to the iron frame and carefully observed the small wine cup. He found that there was not a single drop of liquid in the cup, and the cup did not emit any smell. He reached out and picked up the wine cup on the iron frame. A special coolness that could calm his mind in an instant made an idea flash through his mind. He took out the remaining 100 flowers fragrance wine from the storage ring, filled the small wine cup to the brim, and carefully observed the changes in the wine with his eyes and divine sense. The originally rich wine fragrance gradually began to fade, and the turbid liquid began to become clear. At the same time, his divine sense found that the wine in the cup was faintly emitting a strange and mysterious aura. When the 100 flowers fragrance wine in the cup completely turned into clear and transparent white wine, Howard, after a brief mental struggle and the void spirit mouse's reassuring promise, finally raised his head and drank the white wine in the cup. When the white wine entered his stomach, the wine burst out with a strange energy which made Emperor Wu's mental cultivation of the advanced stage of the second stage rapidly advance to the peak of the second stage of the Emperor Wu, which was completely on par with the level of his physical body, primary energy, and soul power. This, just changing the liquid contained in the 100 flowers fragrance wine, could directly improve one's mental cultivation by a small stage. The heaven-defying effect of the wine cup made Yu Haoran feel that his little heart suddenly stopped beating. Yu Haoran, how is it? What kind of special effect does the purified wine have? The shock on Yu Haoran's face and the fluctuation of his mental aura just now made the void spirit mouse eager to know what kind of powerful effect this mysterious little restaurant had. It was impossible to really explain the heaven-defying effect of the wine cup transforming the 100 Flowers fragrance wine through words. At the same time, he also wanted to know if the wine transformed by the wine cup also had the effect of improving the mental cultivation of the void spirit mouse. Therefore, Yu Haoran poured another cup of 100 Flowers fragrance wine. After the wine cup transformed the 100 Flowers fragrance wine into fragrant white wine, he directly signaled the void spirit mouse to drink the white wine in the cup and experience the effect of the wine. Yu Haoran, the wine that can improve mental cultivation. Is it the effect of the wine cup or the wine cup's own powerful ability that can improve mental cultivation? I think you'd better test it now. After feeling the powerful effect of the wine in the cup on the cultivation of the mind, the empty spirit mouse, who was not good at drinking wine, immediately thought of a key problem and hurriedly reminded him. Little void spirit mouse, your reminder is very timely. He was too shocked by the wine's effect on mental cultivation and ignored the key question void spirit mouse just now. After the engagement and marriage ceremony, if the wine that could improve mental cultivation could only be effective with a wine like the 100 Flowers fragrance wine, then the heaven-defying effect of the small wine cup would be greatly reduced. Immediately putting away the wine jar with the 100 Flowers fragrance wine, Yu Haoran used Yuan Li to gather the moist water in the stone room, and finally condensed a dozen drops of clear water, and then dripped them into the small wine cup. After only 3 seconds, a trace of joy appeared on his face. The originally colorless and odorless clear water gradually began to emit a faint wine fragrance. At the same time, his divine sense also felt that the clear water in the cup began to condense a trace of mysterious aura. When the clear water in the wine cup had completely transformed into white wine, Yu Haoran directly held the cup and drank it in one gulp, and then carefully felt the effect of the wine. Emperor Wu was the limit of the peak of the second rank, and had touched the bottleneck of a breakthrough. This was the powerful effect of the small restaurant's water transformation. Yu Haoran, how is it? The void spirit mouse asked anxiously. Turning his head to look at the void spirit mouse on his shoulder, Yu Haoran could not suppress his excitement and replied, It's exactly the same as using the 100 Flowers fragrance wine. There's no difference between the two. While Palace was breaking through, he had used the yin-yang strange fire to devour the energy flames separated from the black and white wings to test whether or not to increase the cultivation of Qin Ling Fei and the sword without trace. But the result was that it was useless. The yin-yang strange fire devouring and transforming the energy of the black and white wings seemed to only have the effect of increasing his cultivation and strength. Therefore, he had been worried about how to increase the cultivation of Qin Ling Fei and the sword without trace as soon as possible. After all, the battle for the 5 regions hidden dragon ranking had already widened the gap between him and his 2 beloved women. With the help of the tens of thousands of black and white wings and the yin-yang strange fire, this gap would only widen and eventually affect their relationship. Even if he himself did not have any opinions, it would bring a lot of pressure to Qin Ling Fei and the sword without trace, especially to Qin Ling Fei, who had average talent and potential. Now, with the small wine cup that could directly increase the cultivation of the mind and the various pills that he refined, Qin Ling Fei and the sword without trace's cultivation would be able to catch up very quickly. After ecstatically putting away the small wine cup, Yu Haoran's gaze turned directly to the 5th treasure on the iron shelf. It was a shabby jade slip with a prominent color and a few small cracks on its surface. After careful examination with divine telekinesis and formula Dao, as well as the double confirmation of the empty spirit mouse, Yu Haoran used his mind to check the information recorded in the jade slip but unexpectedly found that his consciousness could not enter the space of the jade slip at all. The reason was that the surface of the jade slip hid a sealing formation that even divine telekinesis and formula Tao could not detect. Due to the small cracks on the surface of the jade slip, Howard did not dare to use divine telekinesis to forcibly tear open the defensive seal. He could only trouble the second clone in his sea of consciousness to see if he could remove the seal hidden in the jade slip. Brother Yu, the seal in the jade slip is a profound formation that I have never seen before. With my current cultivation and formations, I do not have the ability to remove the seal for the time being. Unless Elder Pagoda personally makes a move, only then can I. Suddenly remembering that the main body lost control of his emotions a while ago because of driving away the Thaling, the second clone did not continue speaking. That's right. Although the second clone did not continue speaking, Howard's desire to find Thaling grew stronger when he thought of his profound cultivation and formations, his vast experience, and his terrifying strength as a third tribulation demigod. Just as Howard thought of looking for Thaling for the second time, in the Osmanthus forest dozens of miles away from Qingyang City, the slightly dim Thaling was holding the main body of Victor in his left hand and the 6 star-like ocean-suppressing pearls in his right hand. He stared at the young man in white who was holding the void mirror in front of him and asked with a fierce expression. Chapter 1672. Qingyang City, Osmanthus Forest. In the face of Thaling's harsh question, the young man in white only chuckled proudly and did not give any answer. The heaven's will that is controlled by the 3 spirit destroyers still has the ability to stop the gods from coming to the Tianxin continent. Then, the only thing that can break through the defense of the Green Lotus with the strength of a third tribulation demigod is the heavenly refining pot that is familiar with my weakness. Seeing that the weapon spirit of the Void Mirror was unwilling to reveal the identity of the sneak attacker, Thaling began to deduce the origin of the sneak attacker. Heavenly refining pot. I've already guessed that the sneak attacker is you. Stop hiding and come out. Feeling that his speculation was correct, Thaling immediately raised his head and shouted at the void. Purple Spirit, you've guessed wrong. Following Thaling's loud shout, the void behind the young man in white suddenly split open. Then, a middle-aged man in a purple-gold robe with a dignified appearance and a noble temperament walked out of the crack in the void with a stone seal in his hand. This is impossible. How can you still be alive? Seeing the purple-robed, middle-aged man walking out of the crack in the void, Thaling was shocked and took 9 steps back. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he shouted, "Even you, purple spirit and ethereal spirit, are still alive. Why can't I be alive?" Facing Thaling's shout, the purple-robed middle-aged man sneered and asked, "Didn't you have your body completely destroyed by the ancient god shadow formed by the 12 ancient witches?" Thaling asked with a trembling voice as he continued to take 9 steps back. "How could those simple-minded, brawny boors see through my sky-stealing, sun-swapping secret technique?" The purple-robed middle-aged man mocked in disdain. Then, the purple-robed middle-aged man turned to look at his stone seal and said proudly instead of disdain, "Violet spirit, if I hadn't pretended to die in the hands of the ancient god condensed by the ancient sorcerer, how could chaos have fearlessly endured the destructive blow of the ancient destruction for the sake of billions of people, causing his true form, the Bell of Chaos, to suffer unimaginable damage? For countless years, if I hadn't carefully hidden my tracks, the Bell of Chaos wouldn't have dared to self-destruct and plan to use the 36 marks of chaos to be reborn." Rebirth. Ignoring the purple-robed, middle-aged man's boasting, Thaling was completely stunned by the information that the man had just revealed. As Khanate supreme treasures, be it the most powerful Bell of Chaos or the lowest grade Armageddon Saber, they all carried the mark of the origin of chaos. The only difference was the number of chaos marks of chaos. 7 treasures of chaos. The primal chaos mark was a manifestation of their strength and the grade of their natural supreme treasures. At the same time, it was a guarantee that they could be reborn, or it could be said that it was their ultimate life-saving trump card. However, Using the heavenly refining pot to be reborn was different from nurturing the weapon spirit and recovering the fallen grade. It was a new beginning after losing all memory and strength. At the same time, using the heavenly refining pot to be reborn was accompanied by a great risk. It was very likely that the heavenly refining pot would not be able to reassemble the heavenly refining pot, just like the heavenly refining pot that had been seized by the void mirror. After the shock, Thowling couldn't help but begin to guess why the Bell of Chaos would choose to use the heavenly refining pot to be reborn at this time. Did something happen that finally drove him to make such a risky decision? Howling, when did Brother Chaos choose to separate the heavenly refining pot? If you want to know why the Bell of Chaos made such a risky decision, he had to know when he chose to separate the heavenly refining pot. Therefore, Thowling raised his head and asked the purple-robed middle-aged man. 2 years ago, when the osmanthus flowers bloomed, not only Thowling wanted to know why the Bell of Chaos chose to separate the heavenly refining pot, the purple-robed middle-aged man, who had always been very wary of the Bell of Chaos, also wanted to know the reason. Therefore, in the face of Thowling's inquiry, the purple-robed middle-aged man replied without hiding anything. Rui Bell. After hearing that the Bell of Chaos chose to separate the heavenly refining pot, Thowling immediately thought of the Rui Bell, a defensive treasure that he had refined for Yuhauran. At that time, when he decided to refine the Rui Bell, he completely imitated the original Bell of Chaos. Therefore, the shape and color of the Rui Bell, as well as the structure of the formation in the bell, were exactly the same as the Bell of Chaos. The only difference was that there was no heavenly refining pot in the Rui Bell. However, if he could gather the 36 heavenly refining pot, then the Rui Bell would not only be the most suitable carrier for rebirth, but it would also be possible to restore the Bell of Chaos to the grade and strength of the number 1 divine artifact in ancient times. Thinking of this, Thowling immediately had the idea of looking for Yuhauran. Although they had said that they would cut off all ties with each other when they separated in anger, as long as he explained the cause and effect clearly, they would definitely be able to reconcile with each other based on the deep friendship they had accumulated over the years. Moreover, after the original victor left the space of Yuhauran's sea of consciousness, the speed of recovery of his injuries became slower and slower, gradually affecting his ability to unleash his power as a weapon spirit. Therefore, even without the heavenly refining pot, Thowling decided to find an opportunity to reconcile with Yuhauran after dealing with the weapon spirit of the Void Mirror. Purple Spirit, why did Hun Dun choose to separate the heavenly refining pot? After seeing the confusion in Purple Spirit's eyes gradually being replaced by shock, the purple-robed middle-aged man knew that Purple Spirit, who had a deep relationship with the Bell of Chaos, had already guessed the reason why Hun Dun Dun chose to be reborn. Because a magic treasure that can perfectly integrate the 36 heavenly refining pot has appeared in the Tianxian continent. It can allow Big Brother Hun Dun to be reborn and return to the peak state of ancient times. Seeing that the other party was willing to reveal the specific time when the Bell of Chaos would separate the heavenly refining pot, Thowling answered the other party's doubts truthfully. Of course, his answer was not entirely out of kindness. Instead, it was to give the other party a heavy pressure so that the other party would not notice Yuhauran for the time being. After all, according to the thought process of the weapon spirits of innate treasures, a magic treasure that could withstand the 36 heavenly refining pot must be a spirit treasure that was born from the heavens and earth. For the time being, they would not suspect that Hun Dun had the ability to refine weapons. After hearing Thowling's reply, the purple-robed middle-aged man and the white-clothed youth could not help but change their expressions. After exchanging a glance, they both saw the shock in each other's eyes. Chapter 1673. Qingyang City, in the Osmanthus Forest. Seeing Victor break through the void and leave, the white-clothed youth immediately activated the power of the void mirror to travel through space. He planned to chase after the Thowling, but the purple-robed middle-aged man shook his head and stopped him. "Little Kong, there's no need to chase after him." After dispersing the activated power of the body, the white-clothed youth looked at the purple-robed middle-aged man in confusion. If the Bell of Chaos wants to be reborn smoothly, in addition to the congenital magic treasure as the carrier of rebirth, the 36 marks of chaos are also the key. The purple-robed middle-aged man glanced at the crack in the void created by Victor and explained, "So, next, you and little Tion will work together to find the remaining marks of chaos. I will look for the magic treasure that is suitable as the carrier of rebirth." "Yes, how soon?" After hearing the purple-robed middle-aged man's instructions, the white-clothed youth's confusion disappeared. He respectfully responded and immediately returned to the void mirror, then disappeared in the osmanthus forest in an instant. Due to the restrictions of the heavenly Tao, the Tianxin continent will give birth to a congenital magic treasure every 50 years or so. I don't know which magic treasure is suitable for the rebirth of the Bell of Chaos. Looking at the place where the void mirror disappeared, the purple-robed middle-aged man frowned and muttered to himself, "1 year. If I can't find the congenital magic treasure within a year, then I will accept the suggestion of the 3 holy exterminating spirits and use their manipulation of the will of the heavens to determine the exact whereabouts of the congenital magic treasure." Inside the secret vault, since he couldn't remove the seal formation on the jade slip, and he couldn't make up his mind to search for the thaling for the time being, Yuhaoran could only carefully put away the jade slip, then turned and walked to the iron shelf on the west side of the stone room. At first, when he was observing the items placed on the iron shelves on the east and west sides of the stone room, he was using his naked eye to observe and occasionally glanced at them. But when he walked to the iron shelf on the west side of the stone room, his gaze was fixed on an extremely exquisite jade box. He was surprised to find that there was another magic treasure about 10 centimeters away from the jade box. However, the size of this treasure was too small, and it was small to the point it was the size of a grain of rice, causing him to not notice it in the beginning. However, when he used his divine thought to scan the treasure that was the size of a grain of rice, his expression could not help but tremble slightly. He immediately used his origin energy to suck the treasure into his palm. Looking at it up close, the rice-sized treasure was actually an exquisite array flag with a lifelike flame embroidered on it. Back when he was in Green Lotus's cave abode, Thaling had given him a detailed introduction of the different types of innate spirit treasures and how to identify whether they were innate spirit treasures nurtured by the heaven and earth or innate spirit treasures crafted after birth. At the same time, the experience of seeing the Wuji apricot yellow flag and the green lotus precious color race with his own eyes made him very sure that the small and exquisite formation flag in his hand was the floating flame flag of the innate 5-element spirit flags. In other words, it was a top-grade connate defensive spirit treasure that could be fused with the Wuji apricot yellow flag and the green lotus flag. Yuhaoran could not help but sigh softly when he thought about how the estrangement between him and Thaling had deepened and how it had led to the final rupture, all because of his overbearing possession of the green lotus flag. Then, he directly sent the small and exquisite floating flame flag into the space of his sea of consciousness and instructed his second doppelganger. "Brother Ran, see if you can remove the seal on the floating flame flag. Fixed talisman shrinking formation." After carefully examining the small and exquisite formation flag, his second doppelganger gave the origin of the sealing formation and the time needed to remove it. 3 days. I need 3 days to remove the sealing formation. Brother Ran. After removing the seal formed by the fixed talisman shrinking formation, you can refine the floating flame flag into your own spirit treasure. As long as he could successfully remove the seal on the floating flame flag, it did not matter how long it took. At the same time, he thought about how although his second doppelganger's cultivation of formations was very strong, he was too obsessed with the cultivation of formations, which led to his own strength being very weak. Therefore, Yuhaoran decided to give the floating flame flag, which had top-grade defensive capabilities, to his second doppelganger in case he was separated from his second doppelganger in the future and had a way to protect his life. Okay. In response, his second doppelganger nodded in agreement without hesitation and began to quickly remove the seal formed by the fixed talisman shrinking formation. Ignoring his second doppelganger who was removing the seal, Yuhauran looked at the exquisite jade box. He stretched out his palm and pressed it directly on the jade box, beginning to use his divine thought and spell Tao senses to sense the danger in the jade box. Puff! An extremely fierce aura directly wiped out his divine thought that had just taken the risk to enter the jade box. This made his face turn pale instantly, and he took a few steps back and could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Yuhauran, are you okay? Using a special ability to sense the situation in the jade box was far faster than using divine thought to check the situation in the jade box. Therefore, just as Yuhauran's divine thought was wiped out, the Void Spirit Mouse's method of sensing danger had just touched the jade box, so it did not know what was going on at all, so it immediately asked with concern. After quickly taking a medicinal pill to heal the damage to his divine thought and wiping the remaining blood from the corner of his mouth, Yuhauran excitedly waved at the Void Spirit Mouse to indicate that he was okay, then quickly walked to the front of the jade box, directly activating the strongest defense of the ancestral witch's physical body. And mobilizing the wishful bell that had been integrated into his soul, Yuhauran reached out and slowly opened a tiny gap in the jade box. Then, a dazzling golden light burst out, causing him to immediately close the jade box while using all his Yuan Li and soul power to intercept and wrap the golden light. The phantasmal gold stone that contains the origin of gold. Seeing the golden light forcibly wrapped by Yuhauran, the Void Spirit Mouse cried out in surprise when it sensed the terrifying sharpness contained in the golden light. After receiving the Void Spirit Mouse's confirmation, Yuhauran, who had already reached his limit, flashed behind the iron frame on the east side of the stone room and immediately dispersed the Yuan Li and soul power that wrapped the golden light, letting the golden light directly blast the front wall of the stone room into powder, also giving a fright to Palace and the others who were sitting cross-legged outside the stone room. It's okay. It's just a power that was accidentally released by a treasure. After waving his hand at Palace and the others, Yuhauran quickly came to the jade box that contained the phantasmal gold stone. As he directly put the jade box into his storage ring, he finally made up his mind to look for the thaling. Chapter 1674. In the treasury of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce's mansion. Since the stone room's walls had been shattered, Bian Xingrui and the others didn't need to hide anything anymore. They walked directly behind Yuhauran and accompanied him to check the remaining 3 treasures on the iron shelf. There was a pill bottle, a green bone, and an ordinary jade box. Perhaps it was because of the phantasmal gold stone that contained the origin of gold that made him finally determined to find the thaling, causing his mind to be slightly absent-minded. He forgot to use his divine thought and formula Tao to check if the pill bottle was safe. He reached out to pick up the pill bottle and directly opened the cork. Then, a chill that could completely freeze one's Dantian and divine soul was emitted from the pill bottle. He immediately mobilized his origin energy and soul power to protect the pale Yunxiang, and then quickly closed the cork. Yuhauran began to carefully examine the pill bottle. He gradually realized that the seemingly ordinary pill bottle was actually carved from the ice essence of 10,000 years mysterious ice. Combined with the extreme chill that erupted from the pill bottle just now, he could vaguely guess what kind of heaven-defying treasure was stored in the pill bottle carved from the ice essence of 10,000 years mysterious ice. At the same time, he also knew what kind of transformation this treasure could bring to Qin Lingfei. However, the origin of the treasure was too great, and there was a great risk in the process of using it. Therefore, without being 100% sure of the origin of the treasure, and without the help of the thaling, he didn't dare to use this treasure to improve Qin Lingfei's cultivation and strength for the time being. After putting away the pill bottle, Yuhauran's gaze turned to the 9th treasure on the iron shelf, which was the green bone. Judging from its appearance, it should belong to a certain kind of exotic beast humerus. However, the broken wounds on both ends made it impossible to distinguish which kind of exotic beast it belonged to based on the length of the humerus. Originally, he wanted to use his divine thought to check the residual energy in the humerus to determine the type of exotic beast. However, Hao Ian, the winged dragon, who had just broken through to the venerable realm and was concentrating on consolidating his realm, suddenly spoke in an urgent voice. "Master, that's my ancestor's humerus. Proud heaven, what grade is this humerus? How does it help you?" It turned out to be the humerus of Aotion, the winged dragon's ancestor. Yu Haoran was surprised, and he instinctively wanted to know if it would benefit Aotion. Peak 9th stage of the God Realm. The remaining 1% can help me break through to the peak 9th stage of the God Realm in a short time. Aotion couldn't suppress the joy in his heart as he replied. Ever since it was hatched using the remnant energy in the divine dragon skeleton, it could be considered to have truly helped its master, except when it was escaping from the white fog space formed by the heaven-trapping rope. The rest of the time, it was just a decoration. Even flying, which it was best at, was abandoned because its master was proficient in tearing through the void. Unlike the heartless black bear, Proud Heaven was a favored child of the wind that could roam the endless void. Proud Heaven's heart was very proud. It couldn't stand the feeling of being ignored and treated like a decoration. It wanted to accompany its master in the bloody battle. Here you go. Yu Haoran actually managed to help him reach the peak of the 9th stage of the Great Emperor realm in such a short period of time. After hearing Proud Heaven's reply, Yu Haoran immediately used his divine telekinesis to send the divine dragon's humerus into his pet space. Then, he looked at the last treasure, which was the ordinary jade box. Considering that the seemingly ordinary pill bottle was actually carved from the essence of 10,000-year-old black ice, Yu Haoran didn't rush to open the jade box. Instead, he used his naked eye to examine it carefully and confirmed that it was an ordinary jade box. After using his divine telekinesis and spelled out to confirm that there was no danger in the jade box, he reached out to open the jade box. He found a dark green leaf in the jade box. After taking out the dark green leaf, Yu Haoran used his mind and divine telekinesis to examine it carefully. However, in the end, he didn't find any special effects. It was as if it was just an ordinary leaf. If it weren't for the empty spirit mouse that had returned to his sleeve, reminding him that this leaf contained a very subtle, mysterious aura, he even had the idea of discarding it directly. After putting the dark green leaf back into the jade box and putting the jade box into the storage ring, Yu Haoran slowly closed his eyes. The eternal creation pill, 5 grade 1 spirit stones, a small wine cup that could transform into wine that could improve one's mental state, the floating flame flag, and the phantasmal metal stone that contained the origin of metal. All of these treasures were rare treasures that could be used to quickly improve one's cultivation base and strength. Since the Chamber of Commerce and Heavenly Earth had these rare treasures and lacked top experts, why not use these treasures as early as possible? This was the first strange place he felt. Among the 10 treasures in the stone room, other than the seemingly ordinary leaf and the jade slips sealed by the formation, the remaining 8 treasures were exactly what he was in urgent need of right now. Such a coincidental opportunity was the second thing that made him feel strange. Therefore, after opening his eyes, he looked straight into Bien Xingrui's eyes and asked, "Brother Bien, why didn't you use the treasures accumulated in the stone room to improve the number and strength of the top experts in the Chamber of Commerce? How could you not think about it, Prince Consort?" After hearing Yu Haoran's question, Bien Xingrui explained with a wry smile. But since the establishment of the Chamber of Commerce, there has been a very serious power and financial struggle between the Chamber of Commerce's president and the elders. Everyone wants to use the treasures in the secret vault to improve their subordinates and confidants. In the end, these top treasures are completely reduced to decorations. Bien Xinrui's explanation dispelled the first strange feeling in his heart, But the second strange feeling could only be dispelled after his cultivation in Formula Dao reached the great Grandmaster realm. Therefore, Yu Haoran, who suddenly wanted to leave, nodded to Palace, Yun Xiang, and Bian Xingray. Let's leave here. Not good. After passing through the 100-meter-long passage, Yu Haoran stepped out of the giant python's bloody mouth when he suddenly felt energy fluctuations in the surroundings. At the same time, he shouted and immediately took out the immortal trapping sword to observe the surroundings. After hearing Yu Haoran's warning, Palace also took out the immortal culling sword and rushed out of the passage. Then, he stood next to Yu Haoran, vigilant of the enemies hidden in the surroundings. Although he could feel the powerful energy fluctuations, the surrounding broken walls and empty scene made him frown. Chapter 1675. In a mansion of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce. After hearing the second doppelganger's reminder, Yu Haoran directly held the sword hilt without any hesitation. As he was about to pull out the immortal trapping sword, he ordered Palace, "Brother Qi, pull out the immortal slaying sword immediately and break the illusion in front of us." Palace's instinct as a top exotic beast also made him feel a dangerous aura. As soon as Yu Haoran's order was finished, he had already begun to pull out the immortal slaying sword. However, just as the immortal trapping sword and the immortal slaying sword were pulled out halfway, Yu Haoran felt the pain of his body being forcibly torn apart. Feeling the tearing power that could threaten Emperor Wu's realm, Yu Haoran thought of Yun Xiang, who was only a first-level martial emperor. Although he was unwilling to give up, his desire to protect his disciple made him give up on pulling out the sword. After instantly activating the strongest defense of the ancestral sorcerer's body and the Rui Bell, he flashed to Yun Xiang's side and protected Bian Xingray under the protection of the Rui Bell. Boom! Palace, who had successfully pulled out the immortal slaying sword, endured the tearing power's damage to his body and the rapid consumption of the original energy and soul power of the immortal slaying sword, and slashed out a terrifying sword Qi with all his strength. However, just as the sword Qi was slashed out, a black hole suddenly appeared under his feet and directly sucked Yu Haoran and the others into the black hole. The earthly venerable of the Yushu Temple, with a trace of horror on his face, quickly appeared in front of the giant python's bloody mouth. When he saw Yu Haoran and the others completely swallowed by the black hole, his horror was immediately replaced by surprise. He could not help but look up to the sky and laugh. Huh, earthly venerable. Just as the earthly venerable was laughing complacently, a white-haired old man in a white robe with a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth came to his side and said with a deep sadness, "Master Hua and Master Lin have already passed away." The earthly venerable, who suddenly stopped laughing, also showed a trace of sadness in his eyes and consoled. "Master Cho, my condolences." The earthly venerable, who had regained his sorrow, said excitedly. However, the deaths of Iasin Inyu and Master Lin were worth it. It was precisely because they sacrificed their lives to activate the teleportation formation that the Yushu Temple's archenemy, Yu Haoran, was sent into the traps set by the Celestial Lord in advance. The white-haired old man, called Master Cho, looked up at the earthly venerable with a hint of hesitation in his eyes. In the end, he shook his head and reminded with a bitter smile. Earthly venerable, due to the terrifying sword Qi formed by the immortal slaying sword that killed Master Hua and Master Lin, it also destroyed the final positioning of the teleportation formation. So what? The earthly venerable, whose face instantly darkened, immediately asked, "Earth venerable, it's very likely that the positioning transmission formation won't be able to send Yu Haoran and the others to the trap we set up beforehand." Seeing the terrestrial venerable's face darken in an instant, Cho sure panicked and hurriedly replied, "Damn it! If they couldn't send Yu Haoran and the others to the trap they had set up beforehand, then the illusory formation and positioning transmission formation that they had painstakingly set up, as well as the lives of 2 formation masters at the peak of the formation Great Grandmaster realm, would have been wasted. What's more, with Yu Haoran's shrewdness, he would definitely be able to guess who had launched the sneak attack. This meant that both sides had completely fallen out with each other, and the next step would be a real battle with real swords and spears. Given the current situation of the Yushu Temple, it was not good to expose too much of their strength for the time being. The moment Yu Haoran was completely swallowed by the black hole, he knew that the positioning transmission formation had begun to work. Therefore, he could only try his best to protect Yun Xiang and Bian Xingrue. When the tearing force formed by the transmission of the black hole began to weaken gradually and finally disappeared, he immediately mobilized his divine thoughts to check the situation around him. Then, his eyes revealed a look of incomparable shock. He was shocked, not because they had fallen into the Yushu Temple's trap as his second doppelganger had speculated, but because of the exotic flowers and herbs that could be seen everywhere within 100 miles, as well as the rich and pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the surroundings. Brother Yu, where are we? Pallas, who was born in the sealed demon's secret realm, did not understand the situation of the Tianxin continent at all. Therefore, after discovering the fairyland-like scene in front of him, he instinctively asked Yu Haoran, who had convinced him. Gently shaking his head, Yu Haoran withdrew the defense of the wishful bell and the ancestral sorcerer's physical body. Then, he mobilized the divine thoughts of Emperor Wu, who was at the peak of the 3rd grade, and directly began to check the situation within a radius of 10,000 miles. The result was exactly the same as the situation within 100 miles. The same rich and pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and the same exotic flowers and herbs that could be seen everywhere. Yu Haoran, this seems to be a secret realm where risk and opportunity coexist. The Void Spirit Mouse, who had left his sleeve, used its special treasure hunting ability to carefully sense the surroundings, and a trace of seriousness appeared in its eyes as it reminded him. Master, is this the pet beast that you just signed a contract with? Looking at the silver-white mouse that gave off a cute and lively feeling, Yun Xiang, who had a natural fondness for pets, immediately scurried to Yu Haoran's side and looked at the Void Spirit Mouse with stars in her eyes. Little girl, stay away from me. The Void Spirit Mouse looked at Yun Xiang with a trace of vigilance in its eyes and warned her rather rudely. Unfortunately, the Void Spirit Mouse's small and delicate body and cute and lively temperament made the angry and unhappy Void Spirit Mouse look even more adorable and silly, which also made the number of stars in Yun Xiang's eyes increase. Little girl, since you are Yu Haoran's disciple, I won't argue with you, but don't go too far. Looking at Yun Xiang, who slowly stretched out her hand to stroke its head, the Void Spirit Mouse instantly flew into the air and immediately threatened her fiercely. But Yun Xiang, who was overflowing with love, did not care about the power of the Void Spirit Mouse at all, and immediately flew into the air to chase after the Void Spirit Mouse. Ignoring the quarrel between the Void Spirit Mouse and Yun Xiang, Yu Haoran slowly closed his eyes and began to use the means of the pet beast contract to contact the black bear outside. When he entered the secret warehouse of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce, he specifically left the black bear to kill the more than 20 martial sages and martial venerables who had besieged Yun Xiang. Later, when he left the secret warehouse, he suddenly encountered the illusion formation and positioning transmission formation set up by the experts of the Yushu Temple, so he did not think of the black bear outside at all. It was not until Yun Xiang mentioned the new pet beast that he suddenly thought of the black bear that was becoming less and less useful to him. At the same time, he also wanted to use the pet beast contract to confirm whether the Void Spirit Mouse had really said that they had been sent to a mysterious secret realm by the positioning transmission formation. Master, where are you going? Chapter 1676. Not a secret realm. The moment he received the black bear's response, Yu Haoran immediately realized that the empty spirit mouse's speculation was absolutely wrong. Because according to the barrier of the secret realm, which could isolate some secret methods and sensing abilities, it was impossible for him to contact the black bear who had signed a beast pet contract at this time. In other words, the area they were in was not a secret realm at all. It was very likely to be a medicinal field carefully cultivated by a top force, or it could be a secret cultivation paradise of a top powerful expert. Therefore, he had to determine his specific location next to deduce the real owner of this area. Black Bear, where are you now? Master, I'd better stay in the mansion of the Chamber of Commerce. After receiving Yuhauran's response, the Black Bear, whose body had shrunk to the size of a small black mouse and was hiding under a piece of broken wall, immediately replied in surprise. Hearing that the Black Bear was still in the mansion of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce, Yuhauran immediately used the special sensing formed by the Beast Pet contract to analyze the distance between them. How is that possible? After sensing for less than 3 seconds, Yuhauran, who suddenly opened his eyes, showed a look of disbelief. Because through the sensing of the Beast Pet contract just now, he found that the distance between him and the Black Bear was only 1,000 miles. But according to the time of the transmission positioning array, they had been transmitted at least millions of miles away. Brother Yu, what's wrong with you? After hearing Yuhauran's denial, Palace, who also used the limit of his divine thoughts to check the area, but did not find anything, hurriedly asked. Yunxiang, who was in pursuit, and the empty spirit mouse, who was trying to dodge, also immediately quieted down. Raising his head to signal Palace not to speak for the time being, Yuhauran closed his eyes again and continued to contact the Black Bear through the Beast Pet contract. Black Bear, is the mansion of the Chamber of Commerce safe now? Master, the earthly venerable of the Yushu Temple, 5 powerful experts of the Emperor Wu realm, and the shadow of a young man with terrifying strength are in the mansion. Through the cracks of the broken wall, the Black Bear glanced at the group of people hundreds of meters away and replied carefully. Can you leave quietly? The moment they were ambushed by the array formation, Yuhauran had already suspected that the ambushers might be from the Yushu Temple. Therefore, when he heard about the earthly venerables and the powerhouses of the Yushu Temple, his heart was as calm as still water without any ripples. He continued to try to determine his location. Sure. Turning his head to look at the crack formed by the broken walls, Black Bear nodded in response. Leave the mansion immediately, Yuhauran ordered. Black Bear, head west. After the Black Bear successfully escaped from the mansion of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce, Yuhauran directed the Black Bear to approach the area where they were according to the Beast Pet contract. Black Bear, stop! When the Black Bear was only 99 kilometers away from him, if it continued to move, the distance between them would increase again. This meant that there must be some special obstacle between him and the Black Bear. Black Bear, where are you now? Master, I am now in a sea of osmanthus trees where the divine mind cannot see the end. After mobilizing the divine mind at the peak of the 7th level of the Venerable Realm and scanning the location, the Black Bear immediately replied, Osmanthus trees. Hearing that the Black Bear was actually in the sea of osmanthus trees dozens of kilometers away from Qingyang City, Yuhauran immediately had a strange feeling in his heart. Then, he motioned the Black Bear to find a place to hide for the time being, and then looked up at the void with a look of understanding in his eyes. Xiaoling, come here. Yuhauran waved his hand to the empty spirit mouse that had stopped dodging and chasing. Xiaoling, next, use the means that can pass through the barrier of the secret realm, and try to see if you can directly leave the secret realm from this position. When the empty spirit mouse returned to his shoulder, Yuhauran pointed to a point in the void above his head and ordered, Okay. After nodding in agreement, the empty spirit mouse immediately rose to a height of about 1 kilometer, then stretched out its little paw and swiped at the void in front of it. Although a crack was successfully created in the void, the empty spirit mouse did not immediately enter the void crack. Instead, it returned to Yuhauran's shoulder with a solemn expression. Xiaoling, is there a spatial fault in the void crack? Looking at the solemn, empty spirit mouse, Yuhauran asked with a chuckle. Yuhauran, how do you know about the spatial fault? The empty spirit mouse's body suddenly shook, and it asked with a shocked expression. Because I can still use the Beast Pet contract induction to contact the Black Bear in the Chamber of Commerce's residence. After replying with a chuckle, Yuhauran turned his head and ordered Bien Xingray. Brother Bien, within a radius of 1,000 miles, not only are there countless exotic flowers and herbs, there is also no danger. You can take advantage of this opportunity to collect some top-grade spiritual herbs, and spiritual fruits to prepare for the upcoming opening of the Chamber of Commerce. This subordinate obeys. After quickly adapting to his role, Bien Xingrue cupped his hands in acknowledgement and immediately turned to pick some exotic flowers and herbs that he was familiar with. After Bien Xingrue left, Yu Haoran turned his head and ordered Palace, "Brother Qi, take out Brother Du Yuan." Pointing his finger at Yunxiang, who had been staring at the empty spirit mouse, Palace asked with slight suspicion, "Brother Yu, could it be that the person who can eliminate the hidden dangers in Brother Du Yuan's body is her?" Du Yuan, who had used the state of epiphany to advance, had actually successfully broken through to the first rank of the Saint Realm. It was only because of his existence that the rules of the secret realm did not kill him. This was also one of the important reasons why he had to leave the demon-sealing secret realm. Although this seemingly weak little girl in front of him was Yu Haoran's direct disciple, her cultivation of the first rank of the martial emperor realm was a little low. Therefore, Palace doubted whether she had the ability to eliminate the hidden dangers in Du Yuan's body. "That's right." Nodding his head to confirm Palace's guess, Yu Haoran explained in detail the reason why Yunxiang could eliminate the hidden dangers in Du Yuan's body. "Brother Qi, Yunxiang's body contains the ghost-devouring poison that can devour the souls of living creatures due to special reasons. The tyrannical qi that formed in Brother Du Yuan's body is actually a trace of inner demons and distracting thoughts that formed during the transformation of his soul. Therefore, as long as Yunxiang controls the ghost-devouring poison and devours the inner demons and distracting thoughts in Brother Du Yuan's soul, Brother Du Yuan will be able to completely recover." After explaining the entire treatment process in detail, Yu Haoran's eyes inadvertently flashed with a trace of guilt. "So that's how it is." After hearing Yu Haoran's detailed explanation, Palace nodded his head to indicate that he understood and cupped his hands towards Yunxiang as he promised. "Little girl, as long as you can completely heal Brother Du Yuan, then I, Palace, will agree to any condition of yours." Chapter 1677. Who was the source of the poison? When could the ghost devourer devour inner demons and impurities? Yunxiang knew nothing about all this, so in the face of Palace's solemn promise, she quickly shook her head and waved her hand. "Xiang Master will assist and guide you in everything. You don't have to worry too much." Stepping in front of Yunxiang, Yu Haoran encouraged her with a chuckle. Taking a deep breath, the scarlet loathe directly cut through the void in front of it. After that, it carefully took out an extremely ugly monster. It immediately looked up and stared into Yunxiang's eyes to see if she would show a look of disgust and fear like the other creatures. But then he was completely confused by Yunxiang's performance. Because Yunxiang neither showed the slightest look of disgust and fear, nor was she as calm as Yu Haoran. Instead, there was a trace of excitement and closeness, like an old friend who had not seen each other for a long time. "Master, he is..." Pointing to the monster lying in front of her, Yunxiang's eyes showed a puzzled look. "Yunxiang, press your left hand on its forehead." Without explaining the specific origin of the poison source, Yu Haoran calmly ordered, "Yes, Master." After answering the order, Yunxiang stretched out her left hand and pressed on the snake head of the poison source. "Mobilize the ghost devourer poison in your body and integrate it with your divine thought." Yu Haoran continued to instruct. "Control the ghost devourer poison into the sea of consciousness of the poison source." After Yunxiang's divine thought integrated into the ghost devourer poison, Yu Haoran continued to instruct without any change in his tone. "Master, the sudden change in the heavenly world chamber of commerce made Yunxiang really see the terrible power of the ghost devourer poison, and also know the ghost devourer poison's desire to corrode the divine soul. Therefore, after hearing Yu Haoran's instructions, she was slightly hesitant. "Don't worry, there won't be any problems," Yu Haoran assured with a chuckle. "All right." Nodding her head, Yunxiang took a deep breath. Then, she controlled the ghost devourer poison to enter Du Yuan's sea of consciousness. Then, Yunxiang's expression changed. Because the ghost devourer that entered the space of the knowledge sea instantly broke free from the control of the divine sense and went straight to the five-colored, mud-shaped divine soul in the knowledge sea. When she tried to control the ghost soul devouring poison with her mind, she was surprised to find that not only did the ghost soul devouring poison not corrode the five-colored god soul, it even began to help the god soul reconstruct its body. In the process of reconstructing its body, it began to devour the black mist that separated from the god soul. Brother Qi, with the elimination of your inner demons and the reconstruction of your soul, Brother Du Yuan will be able to break through to the exalt realm in a short period of time. Seeing that the poison source's aura was gradually stabilizing, Yu Haoran knew that the spirit devourer's poison was starting to take effect. Brother Yu, I can't thank you enough. Palace, who also felt that Du Yuan's condition was rapidly recovering, was excited and immediately remembered that he still owed the other party for saving his life. Now, because of the elimination of the hidden danger in Du Yuan's body, he continued to owe the other party a favor. This made Palace even more grateful, and he patted his chest and promised. In the future, whether it's climbing a mountain of swords or diving into a sea of fire, as long as you say the word, Qiyin will definitely not frown. In response to Palace's promise, Yu Haoran just shook his head with a smile and did not say anything. When Du Yuan's divine soul in the knowledge sea of consciousness was completely restored, Yunxiang, who regained control, immediately controlled the ghost soul devouring poison to withdraw. But when the ghost soul devouring poison withdrew from the knowledge sea of consciousness and returned to Yunxiang's body, a terrifying and pure poisonous energy erupted in an instant, causing her expression to change. Yunxiang, guard this divine soul. Use the mental cultivation method of the divine poison method to absorb the energy that erupted from the poison and use it to increase your cultivation. Yu Haoran was very disappointed when he saw that Yunxiang had fallen into a state of panic because of the sudden explosion of poisonous energy in her body. He immediately reminded her loudly. Master's reminder allowed Yunxiang to quickly calm down from her panic. She then sat down cross-legged and began to use the divine poison method to absorb the poisonous energy. Big Brother Qi, where am I? Du Yuan, who was slowly opening his eyes, asked with a trace of confusion in his eyes, just as Yunxiang was using the poisonous energy to increase her cultivation. Brother Du Yuan, we've already left the demon-sealing secret realm. Palace, who had appeared beside Du Yuan in a flash, reminded him excitedly. After hearing Palace's reminder, Du Yuan turned his snake head in disbelief and began to observe his surroundings. When he saw Yu Haoran with a faint smile on his face, a look of pleasant surprise immediately appeared in his eyes as he called out to him. Brother Du Yuan. After cupping his hands in greeting, Yu Haoran didn't say anything else. He only looked at Du Yuan with a smile on his face, waiting for his next reaction. When Du Yuan saw Yunxiang sitting cross-legged and sensed the poisonous aura of the ghost devouring soul from her body, a look of extreme excitement immediately appeared in his cold eyes. A sacred source body. This is a sacred source body that can allow one to become the sovereign of the poison Tao. Yu Haoran nodded in satisfaction when he saw that Du Yuan hadn't been surprised by Yunxiang's special body constitution. However, there was a trace of guilt in his eyes when he looked at Palace. This was because he was about to lose the brother that he had relied on for companionship. He didn't know if Du Yuan would be enraged because of this. Du Yuan was afraid that he had made a mistake in his judgment. He gestured for Palace to let go of his hands and slowly walked to a position about a meter away from Yunxiang. He then used the mental cultivation method and martial technique of his bloodline inheritance to absorb the unique aura from her body. That's right. It really is a sacred source body. Du Yuan nodded even more excitedly when he sensed the unique aura increasing the grade and strengthening the body constitution. Afterward, he took a few steps back of his own accord and quietly began to protect her. Yu Haoran nodded in satisfaction when Du Yuan took the initiative to protect her. Afterward, he flew to the space crack that the Void Spirit Mouse had created and sat down with his legs crossed. Afterward, he took out a 3-colored, 4-colored, and 5-colored void fruit from his storage ring, as well as a fist-sized spatial crystal. He then instructed the Void Spirit Mouse, "Little spirit, create another crack in space for me." At the same time, he took out a void fruit that could assist in comprehending the power of laws and a crystal that contained spatial energy. The Void Spirit Mouse didn't even need to ask to know what Yu Haoran planned to do next. Chapter 1678. Yu Haoran took a deep breath when he sensed the space-time turbulence within the spatial fissure and the destructive power formed by the spatial faults. He swallowed the tricolored void fruit and began absorbing the energy within the spatial crystal. While Yu Haoran was using the void fruit, the spatial crystal, and the spatial faults to comprehend the supplementary power of the spatial laws, Pallas was glaring furiously at Du Yuan. Just as Yunxiang had successfully advanced to the early 3rd rank of the martial emperor realm with the help of the ghost devourer's poisonous energy and had awakened from her breakthrough, Du Yuan had inexplicably proposed to become her follower and guardian. How could Pallas, who valued friendship more than his own life, not feel enraged? Du Yuan, do you really have the heart to abandon our friendship of several hundred years for a woman? Pallas questioned Du Yuan in a frosty voice as the fury in his eyes gradually ignited. "Big Brother Qi, I only want to cultivate peacefully by Master's side. I never said I would abandon our friendship of several hundred years." Du Yuan defended himself in a rather aggrieved manner when he sensed the killing intent in Pallas's frosty voice. "Du Yuan, I once personally promised you in the demon-sealing mystic realm's poison lake that I would search for all the poisons in the world for you in the future and help you advance to the great success stage of the Du Yuan physique." Pallas's expression didn't soften in the slightest because of Du Yuan's aggrieved explanation. He continued to coldly remind Du Yuan, "Big Brother Qi, all the poisons in the world added together can't compare to the effects of cultivating by Master's side for a day." Du Yuan's slender, cold snake eyes revealed a trace of tenderness and hesitation when he heard Pallas's promise. However, when he thought of the unique aura of the sacred source physique and its effect on the Du Yuan physique, he could only choose to speak the truth. "Du Yuan, do you believe that I'll kill her right now?" Enraged by the betrayal of his friendship, Pallas completely ignored Yunxiang's special physique and its effect on increasing the grade of poison. He pointed the immortal slaughtering sword at Yunxiang and threatened her. "Big Brother Qi, this is a matter between you and me. Why do you have to involve Master?" Du Yuan immediately stood in front of Yunxiang and glared at Pallas with a rather displeased expression. "Good, very good." Poison Source, who had never dared to fall out with him, was now glaring at him because of a woman. Pallas, who had completely ignited his killing intent, was about to wave the immortal culling sword in his hand when he suddenly heard Yu Haoran's invitation. "Brother Qi, can you come up for a chat?" Whether it was Yu Haoran saving his life or the way he handled things, Pallas respected him from the bottom of his heart. Therefore, Pallas took a deep breath in response to Qi Yang's invitation and immediately rose into the air to sit cross-legged in front of him. "Brother Qi, do you know that Du Yuan, who was born from the convergence of the 5 poisons, has an innate fatal hidden danger in his physique?" Yu Haoran, who had successfully comprehended the power of auxiliary laws with the help of the enhancement of the pure energy contained in the space crystal, barely managed to separate a part of his consciousness and open his eyes to ask this question. "Brother Yu, didn't your disciple eliminate the hidden danger for him just now?" Although he was furious, Pallas was still very concerned about Du Yuan's safety. Therefore, he immediately asked anxiously when he heard Yu Haoran's question. "Brother Qi, what Yunxiang helped Du Yuan eliminate was the hidden danger that existed in his soul during the process of his great advancement. The hidden danger I mentioned just now was referring to his 5-poison origin physique." At this point, Yu Haoran lowered his head and glanced at Du Yuan, who was communicating with Yunxiang. A trace of pity appeared in his eyes, and then he began to explain the danger he was facing in detail. According to the records in the Sacred Book of Poison, the convergence of the 5 poisons could only produce crystals that contained the poison origin physique. They were not creatures with independent consciousness. The reason why Du Yuan could be successfully nurtured was most likely related to the special environment of the demon-sealing secret realm. What should have been nurtured was not nurtured, and what should not have appeared had appeared instead. This completely went against the will of the heavens and the laws set by the heavenly Tao. Logically speaking, the moment Du Yuan was nurtured, the heavenly Tao should have sent down a bolt of purple divine lightning to destroy him. At the same time, because the demon-sealing secret realm shielded the will of the heavens and the heavenly Tao, Du Yuan was lucky enough to escape this calamity. However, there are always 2 sides to every coin. Although Du Yuan was lucky enough to escape the bombardment of the purple divine lightning due to the shielding of the demon-sealing secret realm, it was precisely because he had not endured the lightning tribulation of the purple divine lightning that he did not receive the reward of the heavenly Tao. This caused a huge flaw to appear in his physique. This flaw manifested in the disparity between his realm and lifespan. As a spiritual creature born from the heavens and earth, Du Yuan's lifespan was even longer than that of exotic beasts with long lifespans. However, the flaw in his physique caused his lifespan to be exactly the same as that of an ordinary human. In fact, the demon-sealing secret realm's laws had used a special method to allow Du Yuan to enter a state of enlightenment, allowing him to smoothly ascend to the sage realm. Although it caused inner demons and impurities to form in his soul, it could be considered to have saved his life. Otherwise, based on the number of years he had lived and the fact that his grade had always been suppressed, Du Yuan would have died of old age when the demon-sealing secret realm's void fruit appeared. Brother Yu, I wonder if the exotic flowers and herbs that can extend one's lifespan can eliminate the flaw in Du Yuan's physique? After hearing Yu Haoran's detailed explanation, Palace immediately began to think of a way to help Du Yuan despite his worries. Yu Haoran shook his head and glanced at Yunxiang and Du Yuan, who were interacting harmoniously, before speaking to Palace solemnly. There is only one way to prevent brother Du Yuan from dying of old age, and that is to continuously break through. As long as he successfully transforms into a divine beast before reaching the end of his lifespan, the flaw in his physique will automatically be eliminated after he escapes the constraints of the heavenly Tao. Brother Yu, what is a sacred source body? After hearing Yu Haoran's suggestion, Palace knew that he would have to temporarily separate from Du Yuan for a long time. However, before that, he needed to know the effects of Yunxiang's sacred source body on Du Yuan's physique. Brother Qi, the sacred source body is related to Yunxiang's own secret. Forgive me for not being able to explain it in detail, but staying by Yunxiang's side is brother Du Yuan's only chance of survival. Although Yu Haoran refused to divulge any more information about the sacred source body, he still gave Palace a promise that he could rest assured. At the same time, I can also solemnly promise you that I will do my best to help both Yunxiang and Du Yuan increase their cultivation and strength at the same time, so that brother Du Yuan can transform into a divine beast as soon as possible. Brother Yu, my mind is in a mess right now, and I want to be alone for a while. You can continue to use the void fruit to comprehend the power of laws. After hearing Yu Haoran's resolute promise, Palace finally felt relieved. However, after hundreds of years of being together, he couldn't bear to part with Du Yuan for a long time. Chapter 1679. Ignoring Palace, who was adjusting his emotions alone, Yu Haoran swallowed a 4-colored void fruit and continued to comprehend the 12 auxiliary powers of the law of space. 2 hours later, with the sudden fluctuation of the aura of the law on the east side of his body, Yu Haoran, who slowly opened his eyes, immediately showed a look of ecstasy. The 12 auxiliary powers of the law of space were fast, flash, present, east, south, west, north, up, down, nihility, and nothingness. Among them, The most difficult to comprehend and also the most obscure auxiliary powers were the 6 powers of the law of north, south, east, west, and up. Just now, with the help of the 3-colored void fruit, the spatial fault, and the space crystal, he had successfully comprehended the power of the law of nihility. Now, with the help of the 4-colored void fruit, he comprehended the most obscure Eastern law. Not only did he successfully obtain half of the auxiliary powers of the law of space, but he was also full of confidence in comprehending the remaining 6 auxiliary powers of the law of space. Putting away the 5-colored void fruit that he took out in advance, Howard took out a 4-colored void fruit. When he planned to continue comprehending the several auxiliary powers of the law of space, a fierce sword chi suddenly erupted in the valley where Pallas was. Without the slightest hesitation, he quickly put away the void fruit and the space crystal and directly took out the trapping celestial sword. Howard used the help of the power of the law of speed and instantly appeared in the valley thousands of miles away. Then he saw Pallas fighting with a puppet that had no breath of life, but had the strength of Emperor Wu at the early stage of the 9th level. Similarly, without the slightest hesitation, he mobilized all his strength and instantly drew out the trapping celestial sword and directly slashed at the puppet's head with the basic swordsmanship. As a god realm upper-grade immortal trapping sword, the fierce sword chi that erupted when the sword was out of the scabbard already had the power of Emperor Wu at the peak of the 7th level. Then, with the help of the body of the ancestor sorcerer, Emperor Wu's primary power and soul power at the early stage of the 3rd level, and the amplification of the swordsmanship, its power was infinitely close to that of Emperor Wu at the early stage of the 9th level. Moreover, there was Pallas, who also had the immortal slaying sword and could exert the strength infinitely close to that of Emperor Wu at the early stage of the 9th level. Boom! Dozens of cracks immediately appeared on the puppet that was struck by Howard's immortal trapping sword chi. Boom! Immediately after, the puppet that was hit by the sword chi of the immortal slaughtering sword was instantly blasted into countless pieces. Howard quickly put the immortal trapping sword back into its scabbard and glanced at the surrounding environment. He did not find any cave abodes left behind, nor were there any signs of the void being torn apart. He could not help but ask in confusion, "Brother Chi, what's going on with that puppet just now?" Also in his eyes had a look on his face, celestial. He was quite gloomy. Explained. "Brother I don't know what's going on either. I was just sitting there when that puppet suddenly appeared in front of me. Then, without saying anything, it attacked me. Brother Ran, can you see anything unusual about this valley?" Appearing in front of Pallas out of thin air, without any energy fluctuation, Howard immediately thought of the function of the formation. He quickly asked his doppelganger in his knowledge sea for help. After using his divine thought to observe for nearly 3 minutes, his doppelganger suggested with a solemn expression, "Brother there must be a formation in this valley that can hide one's traces and aura. However, I can't find any clues with my divine thought for the time being. Therefore, I need to take control of your physical body and use the secret method that Elder Pagoda taught me to investigate." "No problem." Howard nodded in agreement and handed over control of his physical body. After quickly taking control of his physical body, his doppelganger first circled around the entire valley. Finally, he stood at the position of the puppet that had been killed. Then, his 10 fingers began to rapidly form seals. When the first seal formed by his doppelganger quickly merged with the ground beneath his feet, a faint green light shield gradually appeared in the void 10,000 meters above the valley. When all 9 seals formed by his doppelganger merged with the ground, Pallas discovered that the green light shield that had appeared in the void above his head had covered an area of tens of thousands of kilometers. In other words, the area that they were currently in had actually been covered by the green light shield all along. The sky-shrouding formation. Putting down his 10 fingers that were forming seals, his doppelganger lifted his head to look at the green light shield in the void and muttered to himself with a gloomy expression, "Brother Ann, come back." The fact that his doppelganger had such a gloomy expression meant that he had no confidence in breaking the green light shield that was covering the void above his head. Therefore, Yuhaoran intended to see if he could break through the defense of the light shield with his own methods. After regaining control of his physical body, Yuhaoran directly rose 10,000 meters into the air and stopped below the green light shield. He then extended his palm and slowly placed it on the green light shield. After that, other than feeling a gentle warmth, he didn't suffer any attacks from the formation. He put his palms together and used the ancestral witch's method of tearing the void to tear the green light shield. As a result, the green light shield was completely fine, but he almost suffered from the backlash of the secret method of tearing the void. Let me try. After seeing Yuhaoran's futile attempt, the void spirit mouse, who was full of confidence in its special ability, flew directly to the cyan light shield and then waved its small claws at the cyan light shield. As a result, the green light shield was completely fine, but the void spirit mouse was directly blasted into the valley by the backlash force. If Yuhaoran hadn't been mentally prepared and caught it in time, the terrifying impact of the fall would have caused it to be even more injured. Let me try. Seeing that Yuhaoran and the void spirit mouse were unable to break the green light shield, Pallas, who was about to pull out the kill immortal sword, excitedly reminded. However, just as the kill immortal sword was about to be pulled out of the scabbard, Yuhaoran, who appeared beside him in a flash, forcibly pressed the kill immortal sword back into the scabbard and warned with a solemn expression. The green light shield has the ability to instantly absorb the power of the attack and return all of it. Don't take the risk easily. Brother Yu, I have used the secret method to carefully observe it just now. The green light shield is a circular energy circle that completely seals the area within a radius of 70,000 miles. We can't leave here for the time being. Hearing Yuhaoran's warning, Pallas reminded with a worried look in his eyes. When the second doppelganger used the seal to force out the green light shield, he had already understood the shape and range of the green light shield. Therefore, Yuhaoran, who was not surprised at all, used his divine thought to inform Bian Xing'e, who was collecting exotic flowers and rare herbs, to come back, while instructing Pallas. Brother Qi, you'd better immediately return to Du Yuan and Yunxiang's side to prevent the sudden attack of the puppets. I will find a way to open the defense of the green light shield and then take you out of here. Chapter 1680. After Pallas quickly left the valley, Yuhaoran raised his head and looked at the green light barrier that was fading away again. A look of contemplation appeared in his eyes. Actually, it was very simple to leave the area covered by the green light barrier. That was to use the location teleportation talisman given by Dongfang Huayun and directly teleport back to Chaoyang Peak in the eastern region. Just now, he had already let his second clone analyze the power of the green light barrier and confirmed that it was unable to block the teleportation talisman. However, he only had 2 location teleportation talismans on him, and he had a disciple and 3 friends with him. He couldn't leave his disciple or his friends behind and leave alone. When he thought that he couldn't use a location teleportation talisman to bring his disciple and friends away, Yuhaoran couldn't help but sigh softly. A look of regret and nostalgia appeared in his eyes. If he didn't chase away Thaling, then with Thaling's profound cultivation and formations, he might have a way to break the green light barrier formed by the formation. Even if he couldn't break the green light barrier formed by the formation, then with a victor that could carry living people, he could use a location teleportation talisman to bring everyone away. When he thought of the victor that could carry living people, a light suddenly flashed in Yuhaoran's mind. Then, he immediately rushed out of the valley and went straight to Pallas. Brother Qi, the next question will definitely be very offensive. Yuhaoran first apologizes to you. Seeing Pallas standing 10 meters away from Yunxiang and Du Yuan, Yuhaoran appeared in front of him in a flash. Then he solemnly cupped his hands and apologized and pleaded. However, this question concerns whether we can successfully leave this place. Therefore, Yuhaoran hopes that Brother Qi can tell me frankly. Brother Yu, you're too polite. If you have any questions, just ask. I will definitely tell you everything I know. Faced with Yu Haoran's serious pleading, Pallas hurriedly cupped his hands and promised. Brother Qi, have you successfully opened up an independent space in your body? Looking straight into Pallas's eyes, Yu Haoran asked nervously. That's right. To this, Pallas did not hide anything and nodded in confirmation. He then further explained the reason why he could successfully open up an independent space. Back when I was sealed away by the ancient demon race, I once heard the son of a demon race's grand prince discuss with a peak 9th level great emperor subordinate how to create an independent space and how to expand the area of the independent space. Brother Yu, I also used the secret method that they discussed to finally open up an independent space in my dantian. Brother Qi, can the independent space you open up contain living beings? Although Yu Haoran really wanted to know the secret method that could open up an independent space, he knew the importance of this matter. After hurriedly dispelling the distracting thoughts in his heart, he still asked nervously. Of course. Pallas nodded and replied. Brother Qi, how big is the area of the independent space you've opened up? Although Yu Haoran had calmed down a little, he was still a little nervous as he continued to ask. Less than 60 square meters. Pallas replied a little embarrassedly, because the son of a demon race's grand prince who revealed the secret method of opening up an independent space. Only Emperor Wu's peak 3rd level cultivation had successfully opened up an independent space of more than 1,000 square meters. Phew! After getting the exact size of the independent space, Yu Haoran could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Then he took out a location transmission talisman and explained to Pallas. Brother Qi, this is a top-notch location transmission talisman. It can cross the space fault and the defense of the green light cover and take us out of the sealed area. Brother Yu, you want to use an independent space that can contain living beings and then use this location transmission talisman to take us out of here. Through Yu Haoran's actions when he asked about the independent space, the astute Pallas quickly guessed his real intention. That's right. While nodding his head to confirm, Yu Haoran shook the location transmission talisman in his hand and explained with a wry smile. With the decline of Talisman Dao, the number of spell masters who can refine talismans in Tianxin continent has become very rare. And this kind of top-notch location transmission talisman that can ignore the defense of the formation and space fault is basically extinct. So I only have this location transmission talisman on me. Brother Yu, I will now open the passage to the independent space. You all can come in. Not caring about Yu Haoran's explanation, Pallas was really concerned about leaving here as soon as possible, leaving this place that he could not absolutely control. So he reached out his hand to open the passage to the independent space and urged excitedly, shaking his head to stop Pallas from opening the passage to the independent space. Yu Haoran raised his head and looked at the place where he comprehended the power of law. His expression was full of expectation as he said, Brother Qi, the probability of a space fault appearing is very low. I don't want to give up this opportunity in front of me. In addition to using the location transmission talisman to leave this area covered by the cyan light cover, Yu Haoran actually had a backup method. That was to use the tearing and shuttling energy contained in the space fault with the assistance of the void fruit and the space crystal, and strive to comprehend the remaining 6 auxiliary powers of law in a short time. As long as he could comprehend the 12 auxiliary powers of law, even if he could not successfully fuse them into the power of law of space in a short time, he could use the power of space shuttling formed by the auxiliary powers of law to easily leave the space fault and the seal of the cyan light cover. Okay. With the assistance of the void fruit, the space fault and the space crystal, even if Yu Haoran did not directly say it, Qi Yin could guess his ambition. Although he did not think that Yu Haoran could successfully comprehend the auxiliary powers of law required by the space law, but without a failed attempt and blow, he would definitely feel regret. So, dispersing the independent space passage that had just been opened, Pallas nodded in agreement. Brother Qi, please help me take care of Yunxiang and Brother Bian. Considering that Emperor Wu's early 9th rank puppet had just appeared in the valley, Howren asked Pallas before soaring into the air to comprehend the auxiliary powers of law. Brother you, don't worry and cultivate. I will do my best to protect their safety. Pallas nodded and promised. Thank you. After thanking him, Howren returned to the position of the space fault. After sitting cross-legged, he began to think about his next cultivation plan. If Emperor Wu's early 9th rank puppet and the cyan light cover that sealed this area did not appear, he would definitely follow his initial plan and continue to use the void fruit of 4 colors. But now the situation had changed, and he could not be sure about the time left for cultivation. Chapter 1681. Thaling, who had successfully escaped from the Osmanthus forest, used his victor's ability to travel through time and space to quickly return to Xianyang City in the southern region. However, just as he left the victor's space, he was immediately attracted by the countless remaining powerful auras in Xianyang City. After a short period of careful observation, he could not help but mutter to himself with a sudden change in expression. This is the aura of the ancient god clan. Could it be that they have already arrived in the Tianxian continent in advance? Without any hesitation, Thaling immediately mobilized the powerful divine thought of a third tribulation demigod and quickly found the prince's mansion that was floating 10,000 meters above Xianyang City. He could not help but heave a long sigh of relief when he saw that although the mansion had suffered a fierce attack, it was not damaged at all. Then, after his divine thought swept through the white clouds in the forbidden area of the palace and the valley at the entrance of the demon-sealing secret realm, his eyes revealed a hint of gratification. It seems that the second doppelganger did not give up on the in-depth study of the exquisite chessboard and was lucky enough to obtain one of the 3 great sealing formations in the world. It is also the only sealing formation of the sun, moon, and stars that he can set up now. However, just as Thaling was about to withdraw his divine thought from observing the sealing formation and head straight for the prince's mansion that was 10,000 meters above the ground, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. He appeared in front of the white clouds in a flash and carefully observed the 4 formation flags that were used to connect the formation imprint to the ancient god trial field. Then, a terrifying cold light flashed in his eyes as he muttered to himself with a gloomy expression. The self-destruction formation hidden in the 4 symbols formation flags of the godly realm will directly destroy the seal of the sun, moon, and stars through self-destruction after 3 years. It seems that the 4 great guardian families do not really want to seal the ancient god and demon clans, but just do not want them to appear in the Tianxian continent prematurely. Then, what is their reason for doing so? What do they want to do during the time when the ancient god and demon clans are temporarily sealed? Due to their hostile stances in the ancient times, Thaling was not familiar with the 4 divine beasts of the ancient times, nor did he know about the 4 great guardian families that ruled the Tianxian continent. Therefore, he could only suppress the doubts in his heart for the time being and head straight for the prince's mansion that was temporarily suspended 10,000 meters above Xianyang City. After scanning the entire mansion with his divine sense, Thaling did not find any trace of Howren, but he was surprised to see his first doppelganger cultivating in the training room. When Thaling thought of the fact that the doppelganger could communicate with the main body at any time and place, as well as the ability to teleport between the main body and the doppelganger, he appeared in the cultivation room of the mansion in a flash and asked with a slightly anxious expression, "Where did your main body go?" Unlike the main body and the second doppelganger, the first doppelganger did not have much interaction with the Thaling, and there was no deep relationship between them. At the same time, Thaling had done all sorts of things to hurt the feelings of the original body, causing the first clone to have a trace of resentment towards him. Therefore, when the first avatar saw Thaling suddenly appear in the training room, a hint of displeasure flashed in his eyes, and he asked with a frown, "Why did you come back? Why did you come back to look for Brother You?" "To confess to you, Howren, about the things that I've been hiding from him previously and to resolve the misunderstanding between us." Thaling did not show any displeasure because of the first doppelganger's overly cold questioning, and he truthfully spoke of his thoughts and plans. The furrowed brows slowly relaxed, and the displeasure in his eyes also returned to normal. The first doppelganger closed his eyes and began to communicate with the main body. After all, as a doppelganger with 3 doppelgangers, the first doppelganger understood the strong feelings between the main body and Thaling, and also knew that Thaling was a powerful aid to the main body's cultivation. Therefore, even though the first doppelganger was dissatisfied with Thaling's willingness to resolve the misunderstanding between them, the first doppelganger was still quite satisfied. However, when the first doppelganger could not successfully communicate with the main body, the first doppelganger could not help but stand up abruptly, and a hint of worry appeared in his eyes as he looked at Thaling. Something happened to the main body. What happened? Thaling asked with an equally anxious expression. The connection between me and the main body has been severed. The first doppelganger hurriedly replied, truthfully, when he thought of Thaling's rich experience and the powerful strength of a third tribulation demigod. Where did Howard go? The connection between the doppelganger and the main body would only be severed under 2 circumstances. The first circumstance was that the main body was accidentally harmed, and the soul and physical body completely disappeared. The second circumstance was that the main body temporarily entered a secret realm attached to the Tianxian continent, or an independent space opened up by a living being, and the barrier between the secret realm and the space blocked the connection between the 2 parties. With Howard's identity as the chosen one, he would be protected by the fortune of the entire world before the immeasurable calamity had truly begun, and would rarely encounter fatal danger. Even if he encountered fatal danger, he would be able to turn the misfortune into a blessing. Therefore, the reason why the first doppelganger could not contact Howard could only be that he had accidentally entered a secret realm or an independent space. Therefore, after a short moment of consideration, Thaling immediately asked, Qingyang City, the headquarters of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce. The first doppelganger immediately replied. Thaling did not know much about the terrain of the Tianxian continent, so he did not know the specific location of Qingyang City. He hurriedly reached out and asked for a detailed map from the first doppelganger. He quickly took out a jade slip depicting the map of the central region that Bian Xingrue had given him and handed it to Thaling. When did Howard go to Qingyang City? When he saw the description of Qingyang City in the jade slip, especially when it mentioned the osmanthus forest 100,000 kilometers west of the city, Thaling suddenly thought of the osmanthus forest where he had stayed for a short time when he was escaping the pursuit of the void mirror and the purple-robed middle-aged man, and a bad feeling instantly emerged in his heart. Yesterday at dawn, the first doppelganger replied in detail. Damn it! When it heard that Howard was heading to Qingyang City at the beginning of the morning, and that he was going to stay in the osmanthus forest at the beginning of the morning, the pagoda spirit was so upset that it almost slapped itself. Because according to Howard's strength and speed, it would take about an hour and a half to reach Qingyang City. That time was when he faced the void mirror and the purple-robed middle-aged man in the osmanthus forest, and they were only dozens of kilometers apart. However, it was important to immediately go to Qingyang City to find the whereabouts of Howard, so Thaling quickly put away his annoyed heart and ordered the first doppelganger. You continue to stay in the mansion and wait. I will go to Qingyang City to find Howard. Okay. The reason why the original body left him behind was to have an extra way of escape in case of an accident. Therefore, in the face of Thaling's order, the first doppelganger nodded in agreement without hesitation and exhorted. Thaling, when you find the original body, don't forget to ask him to use the means of telepathy to inform me that he is safe. I know. Chapter 1682. In an unknown space. Although the 5-color void fruit was far more effective than the 4-color void fruit in assisting the comprehension of the power of law, as an auxiliary power of law that integrated the law of space, it was not only the most unpopular but also the most difficult to successfully comprehend the power of law. Therefore, after spending nearly 3 hours and consuming another 3-color void fruit, Howard finally succeeded in comprehending the power of law of the West. Using the space crystal to deepen his comprehension of the power of law, Howard glanced at Palace and the others below and found that they were in good condition. They should not have been attacked by the puppets. After withdrawing his gaze, Yu Haoran took out a 4-color void fruit and a 5-color void fruit, intending to use the powerful auxiliary effect of the 2 void fruits to speed up his comprehension of the auxiliary power of law. However, just as he put the 2 void fruits to his mouth, his 6th sense instantly gave him a fatal warning. He used the power of law of the West that he had just comprehended to move dozens of meters away in an instant. At the same time, the place where he had been sitting cross-legged was hit by a fierce sword chi. While instantly putting away the 2 void fruits and the space crystal, Yu Haoran quickly took out the immortal trapping sword. Then, looking at the spatial fault and the void turbulence that had been blasted out by the fierce sword chi, Yu Haoran's face instantly became gloomy. To be able to blast out the sword chi of the spatial fault and the void turbulence at the same time, the opponent was at least a powerful expert whose cultivation had reached the early stage of level 9 of Emperor Wu's strength. At the same time, from the angle of the sword and the power of the sword chi, the opponent's intention to launch a sneak attack was very obvious. That was, the opponent wanted to take his life directly. Brother Yu, the opponent only temporarily lifted the defense of the sky-blotting seal formation to launch a sneak attack. He did not directly enter the space sealed by the formation. Just as Yu Haoran was looking for the sneak attacker with a murderous look, his second doppelganger in the space of his sea of consciousness quickly reminded him. Using a sealing formation that covered the sky to launch a sneak attack meant that the other party was not a puppet without any consciousness. This was also enough to prove that this sealed space had an owner. Though he didn't know the rank of the sealing formation, the fact that it was able to stop the void spirit mouse's innate ability to tear through the formation and render his clone, who was a mid-stage great emperor, helpless meant that the sealing formation was definitely above the heaven rank. Using such a profound formation to seal such a vast space was enough to prove that there must be an earth-shattering secret hidden within the sealed space. Originally, he only wanted to use the tearing energy formed by the spatial fault to comprehend a few auxiliary powers of law. Once he succeeded, he would use the teleportation talisman to leave the sealed space. However, Yu Haoran was completely infuriated by the fact that the other party clearly wanted to kill him. He appeared beside Palace in a flash and asked with a gloomy expression, "Brother Qi, I'll have to trouble you to put Brother Du Yuan, Yun Xiang, and Brother Bien into the independent space right now. Then, accompany me to investigate what kind of secrets are hidden in this sealed space." "No problem." Nodding in agreement to Yu Haoran's suggestion, Palace opened a crack in the independent space and motioned for Du Yuan and the others to enter. Subsequently, the Qi-Yin beast reminded Yu Haoran after closing the passage to the independent space. "Brother Yu, while you were using the void fruit to comprehend the power of law, I used a special secret technique to investigate this area. I discovered a total of 3 points of suspicion. Take me there," Yu Haoran ordered, tightening his grip on a mortal trapping. "The first point of suspicion is the valley where I was ambushed by the puppet." As it soared into the air, the red loath pointed out the first suspicious location it found. After returning to the valley where the scarlet loath had been ambushed by the puppets, Yu Haoran used his divine sense to find a little bit of crushed puppet powder. Then, using the innate divination technique of the Fushi 8 trigrams diagram, he began to trace the origin of the puppets. However, just as he calculated the exact location of the puppet's appearance in the valley, a powerful and mysterious force interrupted the divination process, almost causing him to suffer a backlash from his formula Dao power. The puppet that ambushed Palace possessed the strength of Emperor Wu's early stage 9th grade. Yu Haoran knew very well that it was impossible for him to trace the origin of the puppet's creation with his Grandmaster level formula Dao cultivation. Therefore, he didn't mind the sudden interruption of his divination process. After swallowing a pill, he motioned for Palace to retreat for a while. Then, he drew out immortal trapping and used the full strength of the ancestral shaman's physical body, origin energy, and soul force to slash at the location where the puppet appeared out of thin air. Boom! accompanied by a deafening roar. A crack about 10 meters tall and several meters wide appeared in the void that was hit by the sharp sword aura. In the crack, apart from several spatial faults and turbulence in the void, there was also an island floating in midair and a palace on the island. Affected by the sky-covering ceiling formation, the crack in the void that was blasted open by immortal trappings, sword aura, quickly closed and finally returned to normal. Yushu Temple. Yu Haoran couldn't help but mutter to himself through gritted teeth as he watched the restored valley vanish into thin air. The reason why the Yushu Temple's reputation shook the entire Tianxian continent was not only because of its mysterious strength, but also because of its unique heavenly palace that could float in midair. The floating island and the palace on the island that appeared in the crack in the void just now was the Yushu Temple's heavenly palace. After all, he had taken the risk to enter the island in his previous life and witnessed the beauty of the heavenly palace with his own eyes. He recalled that he and the others were ambushed by the Yushu Temple using the positioning teleportation formation and were eventually trapped in this space sealed by the sky-covering formation. He recalled that the terrifying sword aura that had ambushed him just now clearly intended to kill him. How could Yu Haoran not know who had ambushed him just now? How could he not know who this sealed, independent space belonged to? Qingyang City, the center of the Osmanthus Forest. Terrestrial Venerable. Yu Haoran seems to have discovered that the space sealed by the sky-covering formation belongs to the Yushu Temple. Just as the crack in the void created by immortal trappings, sword aura disappeared, Cho Shi, who was at the peak of the formation Grandmaster realm, reminded the Terrestrial Venerable with a serious expression. Cho Shi, can you send Emperor Wu, who is at the peak of the 9th stage, into the spiritual sculpted space? Cho Shi's reminder made the Terrestrial Venerable nervous, and he quickly asked, "No." Cho Shi shook his head without hesitation and explained as he looked at the images of Yu Haoran and palace that appeared in the bronze mirror. Chapter 1683. In the Sea of Osmanthus Trees. Cho Shi's categorical refusal made the Terrestrial Venerable feel afraid, but he did not give up and continued to propose. Cho Shi, what if I transfer 3 formation masters at the peak of the Great Grandmaster realm to help? Terrestrial Venerable, even if you transfer 10 formation masters at the peak of the Great Grandmaster realm, apart from shortening the operation time of the formation, it is impossible to send Emperor Wu, who is at the peak of level 9, into the spirit sculpting space. Cho Shi shook his head and rejected his unresigned proposal. Cho Shi, what if it is Dongfang Huaiyun, who is at the level of Formation Emperor? He thought of the 3 treasures cultivated in the spirit sculpting space and the importance of them to the Yushu Temple. Thinking of the cruel punishment he might receive if the 3 treasures appeared because of his own mistakes, the Terrestrial Venerable's heart was instantly filled with fear. He planned to fight with his back to the river. Terrestrial Venerable, you should know the special relationship between Dongfang Huaiyun and Yu Haoran. Isn't inviting her to help Yu Haoran escape from the spirit sculpting space as soon as possible? Although the Terrestrial Venerable had a high status in the Yushu Temple, Cho Shi, as an elder with real power in the Yushu Temple, was qualified and confident to question his stupid idea. Cho Shi, what if Dongfang Huaiyun's younger brother and sister are in the hands of me, the Terrestrial Venerable? The Terrestrial Venerable did not feel the slightest anger because of Cho Shi's questioning and refusal. He reminded him with a slightly ferocious expression. You, although it was despicable and shameless to threaten the other party's family, compared to the 3 treasures cultivated in the spirit sculpting space, any despicable and shameless means were insignificant. Therefore, the anger in Cho Shi's heart quickly subsided. Not only did he not blame the Terrestrial Venerable for his despicable and shameless behavior, but he also began to consider the feasibility of the plan. Terrestrial Venerable, in addition to Dongfang Huaiyun, you also need to ask Qin Yun and Qing Feng for help. After careful consideration, Cho Shi agreed to carry out the other party's plan while further filling in the loopholes in the plan. Okay, after agreeing to Cho Shi's plan, The terrestrial venerable immediately tore through the void and left the sea of osmanthus trees to ask Dongfang Huaiyun. Qingyang City, in front of the mansion of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce. This is the aura of the immortal slaughtering sword. Looking at the mansion's defensive formation that had been forcibly destroyed, Thowling sensed for a moment, and then his eyes revealed a look of surprise as he muttered to himself. Celestial slaying sword, celestial destroying sword, celestial slaughtering sword. 3 of the 4 celestial slaying swords have already appeared. I believe the celestial trapping sword will also appear very soon. If I can gather the 4 immortal slaying swords and combine them with the immortal slaying formation that Taoist Tong Tian created before he passed away, I'm sure I can kill the earthly saber, the heaven refining flask, the void mirror, and the Haotian seal. Taking a deep breath, Thowling forcibly suppressed the surprise surging in his heart. Then, he flashed into the dilapidated mansion and began to use his telepathic thoughts to search for the traces left behind by Yu Haoran before he disappeared. Soon, his divine sense discovered that in an open space in the backyard of the mansion, there was not only the fierce sword chi left by the immortal slaying sword, but also a trace of aura left by the activation of the positioning transmission array. Standing at the location where Yu Haoran was teleported by the array, Thowling closed his eyes and began to carefully sense. In addition to the aura of the positioning transmission array and the immortal slaying sword, there's also the aura of Yunxiang and Bian Xingrui. This means that Yu Haoran was caught off guard and fell into the positioning transmission array that was set up in advance by the enemy. Judging from the fact that the palace attacked with the sword chi of the immortal slaying sword, Yu Haoran did not attack at all. He should have been protecting Yunxiang and Bian Xingrui with all his strength at that time. According to the various auras left at the scene, Thowling began to reconstruct what had happened bit by bit. According to the cultivation of the formation master who set up the array and the grade of the positioning transmission array, Yu Haoran and the others should have been teleported to a place 50,000 miles away. But under the fierce attack of the sword chi of the immortal slaying sword, the power of the array was reduced by more than half. The final teleportation location should be about 10,000 miles away. At this point, Thowling already knew where to find Yu Haoran. Without any hesitation, he rose into the air and went straight to the final teleportation location of the positioning transmission array. However, when Thowling passed by the osmanthus forest in the west of the city, he unexpectedly sensed the aura of an early-stage Level 9 expert of Emperor Wu. Although the geographical location of Qingyang City was very advantageous, there were not too many powerful top forces around. If an early-stage Level 9 expert of Emperor Wu suddenly appeared here, perhaps everyone would feel a little suspicious. Therefore, although he did not stop flying, his powerful divine thoughts of a third tribulation demigod directly swept through the area where the powerful expert was. This is suddenly stopping his flying body. Thowling's eyes revealed a trace of shock. Then, without any hesitation, he flashed and appeared in the center of the osmanthus forest. Then, relying on the terrifying strength of a third tribulation demigod, he directly sealed the spirit of the powerful expert and the formation master. After successfully sealing the powerful expert and the formation master, Thowling immediately walked to the front of the bronze mirror and looked at the reflection of Yu Haoran and Palace. Inside the spiritual sculpted space, after confirming that this sealed area belonged to the Yushu Temple, Yu Haoran's desire to find the hidden secret became stronger. Brother Qi, what do you find suspicious about this valley? Brother Yu, the cyan rock on the west side of the valley. Palace pointed to a cyan rock about 2 meters high that was a kilometer away on the west side of the valley. He flashed and appeared in front of the cyan rock. After looking up and down, he did not find anything strange. Then, he immediately activated the divine thoughts of Emperor Wu, who was at the peak of the third tribulation demigod realm, and directly began to check the situation under the cyan rock. Perhaps it was because of the seal that covered the sky, but there was a very powerful interference force under the ground, which caused the divine thoughts to be able to extend to a depth of about 10 meters. Little Ling, return to my sleeve. Taking out the earth elemental bead that he obtained from Sima Chen Kai, Yu Haoran turned his head and ordered the void spirit mouse on his shoulder. Brother Qi, wait for a moment. After signaling to Palace, Yu Haoran used the earth elemental bead to directly merge into the ground under the cyan rock. As he began to sink, he used his divine thoughts to check the situation around him. When he had sunk to a depth of more than 100 meters, a rich life force suddenly appeared around him. He immediately stopped sinking and used his divine thoughts to carefully sense the life force around him. Although the fluctuations were very weak, he could still feel that the life force was constantly flowing away through his divine thoughts. Chapter 1684. In the spirit-sculpted space underground. Without opening his eyes, Yu Haoran circulated the heavenly will mantra. While absorbing the rich life force underground, he also began to use the innate divination technique of Fushi's 8 trigrams diagram to calculate the source of the life force's final disappearance. After calculating with the innate divination, he was surprised to find that the life force actually disappeared into thin air at the place 100 meters underground. After a short period of careful consideration, Yu Haoran finally decided to take the risk and try to see if he could find out what was constantly absorbing the life force. He slowly sneaked to the place where the life force disappeared, then took out a spirit stone and threw it in that position. Then, the spirit stone also disappeared into thin air. Brother An, mobilizing his primary energy to increase the defensive shield formed by the earth element pearl, Yu Haoran instructed the second clone in the sea of consciousness. Brother Yu, be careful. After reaching out to take the earth element pearl from the main body, the second clone reminded. Nodding his head, Yu Haoran took a deep breath and directly appeared at the place where the life force disappeared. Then, a power very similar to the teleportation talisman made him disappear underground in an instant. When the teleportation feeling disappeared, Yu Haoran found himself in a dim and dark tunnel. Thump, thump, thump. Just as he was about to use his divine thought to check the situation around the tunnel, he unexpectedly heard a thumping sound coming from the end of the tunnel. This thumping sound gave him a very familiar feeling, as if it was the sound of his own heart beating. Could it be that I've been teleported into someone else's body? The familiar heartbeat sound made Yu Haoran's mind flash a very strange but very bold idea. As for whether this bold idea was accurate or not, as long as he could find the source of the thumping sound, he would know at a glance. Therefore, he followed the dim and dark tunnel and went straight to the place where the thumping sound came from. However, after passing a few turns, a familiar feeling surged in his heart. In the end, he stopped running and directly took out the celestial trapping sword, intending to test if the tunnel barrier was as he guessed. When a celestial trapping sword was pulled out by 1 centimeter, as if it had sensed the arrival of danger, its heartbeat suddenly accelerated. At the same time, a terrifying force that was not inferior to the demigod realm came directly from the end of the tunnel. Yu Haoran's expression abruptly changed as he rapidly retreated. At the same time, he drew out the celestial trapping sword, planning to break through the barrier of the passageway to buy time for himself and his clone to move. However, just as the celestial trapping sword's length reached 2 centimeters, the demigod power that was charging toward him suddenly stopped, and its power began to rise continuously. If he was able to kill him with just the strength of a demigod, then why did he continue to increase his attack power? If the sharp sword chi from the immortal trapping sword was not released immediately, then the sharp sword chi would attack indiscriminately. This was the side effect of not being able to refine the immortal trapping sword. Therefore, when the other party stopped attacking, Yu Haoran did not dare to rashly attack the passage barrier. He had no choice but to sheathe immortal trapping sword. Just as the immortal trapping sword was sheathed again, the increasing demigod power immediately began to weaken. This allowed Yu Haoran to gradually understand. He held the immortal trapping sword tightly and took a step forward. The other party immediately increased the demigod power. He let go of the immortal trapping sword and took a step back. The other party immediately weakened the demigod power. After the experiment earlier, Yuhauran had basically guessed the other party's thoughts. As long as he did not get close to the other party's heart, the demigod power would not attack him. On the contrary, he would have to endure the attack of the other party's terrifying power. Although he really wanted to know if the thumping sound coming from the end of the tunnel was a strong and powerful heart, he could only choose to leave temporarily in the face of the threat of the demigod power. Through the transfer between his main body and his clone, Yuhauran instantly returned to the underground that was filled with rich vitality. Looking at the vitality that continued to disappear into thin air, he thought of the grievance he felt when he faced the demigod power. A wave of anger rose in his heart. The hatred that grew in his guts made him immediately think of a very vicious plan. He mentally took out the emerald green gourd from his storage ring. After opening the cork of the gourd, he prepared to pour the poisonous water collected from the poisonous lake directly into the place where the vitality disappeared. A look of hesitation flashed in his eyes. Although the other party used the demigod power to threaten him and made him feel very aggrieved and depressed, the other party was also instinctively protecting him. Would it be too cruel to use the poisonous lake's poisonous water? Although Yuhauran decided to give up on using the poisonous lake's poisonous water, when he thought of the sealed space that belonged to the Yushu temple, he did not give up the idea of revenge in his heart. As he put away the emerald green gourd, he took out 3 second stage first-grade god sleep and threw it at the place where the vitality disappeared. After that, he waited for a while on the spot. He planned to wait until the god's sleep started to take effect before he re-entered the place where the vitality gathered. However, what he discovered in the end was completely out of his expectations. Although the 3 second stage first-grade god sleep elixirs made the other party fall into a deep sleep, the teleportation power that absorbed the vitality completely disappeared. This made him lose the opportunity to re-enter the other party's body. Little Ling, do you think I went for wool and came home shorn? Seeing the power that absorbed the vitality disappear, Yuhauran could not help but complain with a wry smile. Regarding this, the empty spirit mouse, who was also surprised, did not know how to respond. Forget it. I'll return to the surface for the time being, and then check the other 2 suspicious points that Brother Chi mentioned. Putting away the wry smile on his face, Yuhauran used the earth elemental bead to return to the surface. However, he unexpectedly found that Palace was staring at the green rock. Turning his head to look at the green rock that did not change at all, Yuhauran asked puzzledly, "Brother Chi, what's wrong with you?" "Brother Yu, listen carefully." Palace, who had a shocked expression on his face, pointed at the green rock and reminded him. Buzz, 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 buzz. After approaching the green rock and listening carefully for a while, Yuhauran was also shocked to find that the sound of sleeping came from the green rock. Chapter 1685. Inside the spirit's sculpted space. The green rock that could breathe freely in front of him was most likely the mysterious expert in the demigod realm. A terrifying thought flashed through Yuhauran's mind, causing him to instinctively take a few steps back. He looked at the green rock with a shocked expression, and a trace of fear appeared in his eyes. Because in the mysterious expert's body, facing the constantly increasing power of the demigod realm, he couldn't sense the limit of the other party's strength. This meant that the other party was most likely a third tribulation demigod realm expert at the peak of the false god realm. It was also possible that the other party had already reached the martial god realm. Facing such a powerful opponent, how could he not feel nervous and fearful? "Brother Yu, what should we do?" Palace, who was holding the immortal culling sword tightly, asked with a murderous look in his eyes. As an exotic beast that had inherited the bloodlines of 2 divine beasts, the Scarlet Loathe immediately felt a strong sense of fatal danger when faced with the green rock that suddenly showed signs of life. This made it instinctively want to destroy the other party. Destroy it directly. Although the green rock's various changes were very suitable for a creature born from heaven and earth, the rich vitality gathered underground meant that the process of the green rock's birth had been controlled by the Yushu temple. In other words, when the cyan rock was born, it would be the time when the Jade Palace would receive a demigod. It was also possible that they would receive a god of the martial spirit realm. Although the other party could be a third tribulation demigod realm false god or a martial god realm expert. Since it had been poisoned by the divine spirit sleeping pill, it had lost the ability to resist. Therefore, Yu Haoran, who still had a trace of unwillingness and fear in his heart, directly took out the immortal trapping sword and replied with a murderous look. Yu Haoran, Palace, stop! Just as Yu Haoran and Palace were about to use their divine swords to destroy the green rock that had signs of life, Thaling's voice suddenly came from the valley. In the sea of osmanthus trees, forcefully suppressing the joy in his heart, Thaling began to check where Yu Haoran and Palace were trapped and how he could enter the space where he was trapped. After observing the copper mirror, which could show the image of the trapped space, a familiar feeling surged in his heart. Turning his head to look at the formation master whose spirit had been sealed, Thaling's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. He appeared in front of the formation master in a flash and pressed his hand on the formation master's head, beginning to use a soul-searching secret technique to search through the formation master's memories. As expected, it's a sealing formation that can form a spatial fault. Thaling muttered to himself as a look of understanding flashed across his eyes after looking through the memories of the formation master. After shattering the spiritual sea and divine soul of the formation master and the divine soul, the pagoda's spirit soared into the air and observed the entire osmanthus forest. Finally, it found 9 locations that could be temporarily connected to the sky-covering formation. Then, he took out 9 colored array flags from his own body's domain tower and inserted them into the 9 positions that his divine telekinesis had locked onto. Immediately after, his 10 fingers began to quickly form seals, and the seals that he formed were integrated into the 9 array flags. After forming a total of 81 mysterious seals and integrating them into the 9 array flags, Thaling flashed back to the copper mirror and continued to form seals with his 10 fingers. But just as he slowly began to form seals, he unexpectedly saw the image of Yu Haoran taking out the immortal trapping sword appear in the copper mirror. What made him even more shocked was that Yu Haoran and Palace actually planned to use the immortal trapping sword and the immortal slaughtering sword to destroy the molded spirit that even he didn't dare to easily deal with. After temporarily stopping his 10 fingers from forming seals, Thaling abruptly spat out a mouthful of dark yellow essence at the copper essence and loudly stopped them. Yu Haoran, Palace, stop! After seeing Yu Haoran and Palace obediently stop attacking the green rock and quickly put away the immortal trapping sword and the immortal slaughtering sword, Thaling let out a long sigh of relief and continued to form seals that he had stopped just now. When the hand seals slowly merged into the copper mirror, the pagoda spirit inserted both of its hands into the surface of the mirror, then used its mighty strength as a third tribulation demigod to forcibly tear the surface of the mirror apart. Inside the molded spirit space, this is the voice of Supreme Violet Spirit. Hearing the voice that suddenly resounded in the valley, Palace's face immediately revealed incomparable excitement, but also a trace of nervousness. Thinking of a description of Supreme Violet Spirit in his bloodline inheritance, and thinking of the fear that came from the bottom of the heart when the ancient demons talked about Supreme Violet Spirit, Palace hurriedly put away the immortal slaughtering sword and tidied his clothes. With a respectful expression, he waited for Thaling's arrival. Sigh. Yu Haoran, who also put away the immortal trapping sword, could not help but sigh softly. Although he had made up his mind to look for Thaling in the secret warehouse of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce, when he really had to face Thaling, the estrangement and guilt in his heart made him feel quite embarrassed and did not know what to say when the time came. Sizzle. Just as Palace was waiting respectfully and you, Howard, did not know how to face Thowling that was about to appear. The sound of the hollow being torn apart suddenly came from above their heads. Looking up abruptly, you, Howard, and Palace were shocked to find that the green light cover and the spatial fault were forcibly torn apart by a pair of slender palms. At the same time, through the torn hollow, you, Howard, also saw several osmanthus trees outside the formation. When the hollow above their heads was torn apart, about 3 meters high and 2 meters wide, Thowling, dressed in a yellow robe, slowly walked out of the hollow with an excited expression. Although they had not been separated for a long time, for less than a month, Thowling and you, Howard, missed each other so much that it felt like tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. Therefore, even though you, Howard, did not know how to face it, he could not help but feel excited at this moment. Palace pays his respects to your Excellency Amethyst Elder. Palace, who was extremely excited and nervous, did not notice the abnormality between Thowling and you, Howard. He directly knelt down and saluted respectfully. Get up. Glancing at the dantian in Palace's abdomen, Thowling, who was slowly descending in the valley, said with a gentle expression. Then, Thowling looked directly at you, Howard, who was also excited, and took the lead in lowering his posture and said, You, Howard, after dealing with the 3 spirits in the sky-covering seal formation, I will tell you in detail what I have hidden from you. Thowling, are you sure? You, Howard, asked in surprise. Chapter 1686. Inside the Spirit Sculpting Space. If Thowling could confess the things that he had concealed before, then he could completely eliminate the estrangement between them. You, Howard, believed that the feelings between the two could still be restored. That's right. Facing you, Howard's questioning, Thowling nodded his head to confirm, and said with a trace of regret in his eyes, During the period of time that I left you, I experienced all kinds of troubles, which made me completely understand a principle, and that is a single thread does not make a thread, and a lone tree does not make a forest. Even if my strength is strong, there is still something that I can't do. So, please believe me, I, Thowling, will definitely not hide anything from you in the future. Thowling, I believe you. Thowling promised solemnly, and completely eliminated the remaining trace of resentment in you, Howard's heart. He happily nodded his head and replied. After getting you, Howard's reply that he was willing to believe, Thowling secretly let out a sigh of relief, and at the same time looked at the sleeping cyan rock and asked with a trace of doubt in his eyes. You, Howard, what's going on? Thowling, during the period of time that you left, I once refined a kind of poison that can sleep. Walking to Thowling's side, you, Howard, began to introduce the refining process and effects of the God-sleeping pill in detail, as well as the things that happened in the underground just now. Opportunity. Hearing that you, Howard, was actually able to use the refined God-sleeping pill to make the molded spirit that already had instinctive consciousness and whose cultivation was infinitely close to the martial God realm fall into a deep sleep, Thowling couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Thowling, what exactly is this thing? Pointing at the sleeping cyan rock, you, Howard, asked puzzledly. Molded spirit, in the process of being born from the heavens and earth, was refined by the Emperor Realm Spellmaster. It is a kind of puppet that can grow and advance on its own and also feed back the Spellmaster's essence. While explaining the origin of the cyan rock, Thowling walked in front of the cyan rock. Then he stretched out his left hand and pressed it on the cyan rock, carefully feeling the growth of the spirit. Thowling turned to look at you, Howard, and asked in surprise after feeling the sensation for nearly 3 minutes. You, Howard, how many God slumber pills do you have? 13. Without needing to check and recall, you, Howard, directly opened his mouth and replied. Although he had collected a large amount of 1,000 soft-100 charm incense from the 1,000 Butterfly Valley, he was limited by the supplementary herbs he had. In the end, he could only open the cauldron twice and produce 18 pills. Other than the 4 divine spirits that were used on the poison source and the molded spirit, he had tested one on the fire attribute dragon that was at the peak of the 9th level of the martial saint realm when the pill came out of the furnace. How many pills do you need to make the spirit fall into such a deep slumber? Thowling continued to ask. 3. Yuhauran replied truthfully. Yuhauran, go to these 2 places immediately and use the same method to make the molded spirits in these 2 places fall into a deep slumber. Just 3 rank 2, rank 1 god slumber pills were enough to make a molded spirit that was infinitely close to the martial god realm fall into a deep slumber. Thowling sighed at Yuhauran's increasing alchemy ability and immediately ordered in surprise. No problem. Without asking the reason why the other 2 molded spirits were poisoned, Yuhauran reached out and took the jade slip from Thowling. After understanding the exact location of the 2 places he needed to go to, he immediately exploded with his maximum speed and rushed to a dense forest about 30,000 miles away from the valley. After Yuhauran left the valley, Thowling turned to look at Pallas and asked, Chien, if I need to use the immortal slaughtering sword in your hands in the future, would you be willing to borrow it for a period of time? Lord Amethyst Elder here. Faced with Thowling's request to borrow the immortal slaughtering sword temporarily, Pallas took out the immortal slaughtering sword without hesitation and respectfully handed it to Thowling. Chien, keep it for self-defense first. When I need the immortal slaughtering sword in the future, I will personally look for you. Thowling nodded in satisfaction at Pallas's willingness to gift the immortal slaughtering sword and then reminded him in a gentle tone. Chien obeys. After answering, Pallas obediently put away the immortal slaughtering sword. Chien, the body of the 4 immortal slaying swords, was refined by Prime Master Tontian using the bones of the 10 great ancient ferocious beasts. Usually, comprehending the remaining fiendish aura in the immortal slaughtering sword can assist in increasing the purity of the Zhuyin bloodline in your body. Pallas's docile and respectful attitude made Thowling even more satisfied, and at the same time, he also planned to give him some pointers on his cultivation. In this way, not only could he repay the favor of temporarily borrowing the immortal slaughtering sword in the future, but also allow Pallas to better assist Yuhauran. Lord Amethyst Elder, Chien does not want to inherit the consciousness of the ancestral bloodline. He wants to walk a martial cultivation path that belongs to himself. A trace of gratitude flashed through Pallas's eyes at Thowling's pointers, but when he thought of the great achievements he had made when he escaped from the cave that was sealed by the ancient demon clan, he finally mustered up the courage to express his true thoughts, or rather his overly arrogant ambitions. If you want to surpass the consciousness of the ancestral bloodline, you must make your realm and strength surpass the ancestral bloodline. Only in this way can you completely erase the influence of the ancestral bloodline consciousness. Faced with Pallas's somewhat ignorant attitude, Thowling reminded him without the slightest hint of sarcasm. Chien, because you are the hybrid of the ancient mythological beast Chien and Chien, it is very difficult for you to surpass the consciousness of the ancestral bloodline of Chien, not to mention surpassing the Chien of the late stage of the supremacy stage. Therefore, if you want to fulfill your ambitions, you need powerful assistance, such as countless medicinal pills that can assist in increasing your realm and strength, as well as opportunities that can continuously rebirth your physique. Lord Amethyst Elder, Chien understands. In the past few days after leaving the demon sealing secret realm, Pallas had used various methods to understand Yuhauran's experience, so he was very clear about who the assistance Thowling just mentioned was. First of all, Yuhauran's loyal and righteous character made him very respectful, and not to mention that he still owed Yuhauran 2 favors. Even if it was to protect the poison source that followed Yunxiang, he could not easily leave Yuhauran. Okay, I will often guide your cultivation in the future. Pallas's sensible reply made Thowling feel deeply gratified, and he could not help but give a guarantee. Thank you, Lord Amethyst Elder. After excitedly bowing and thanking him, Pallas took a few steps back, then took out the immortal slaughtering sword and began to carefully feel the remaining baleful aura in the sword body. As there was no need to take the risk of entering the body of the spirit creation, he only needed to put the 3 sleeping pills of the gods into life force and rely on the position where they disappeared. Therefore, Yuhauran only spent less than 10 minutes to return to the valley. Chapter 1687. Inside the Spirit Creation Space. Faced with Yu Howren's questioning, Thowling, who was slowly rising into the air, gave him an answer that made him feel extremely excited. Devour the life essence of the three molded spirits to help you and your two doppelgangers break through to the realm of immortality. Rising to the edge of the green light shield formed by the ceiling formation that covered the sky, Thowling directly took out the main body of Victor, then pressed both of his hands on the Victor's top. Mobilizing the power of the 9 chaotic imprints of the main body of Victor, he roared. Absorb! Accompanied by Thowling's roar, 3 pitch-black holes suddenly appeared at the bottom of Victor. The holes quickly condensed an incomparably powerful absorbing force, acting on the green rocks in the valley, the purple rocks in the dense forest, and the white rocks in the rubble. Just as the powerful absorbing force formed by Victor began to forcibly sever the connection between the 3 rocks and the ground, deafening howls came from the 3 rocks. Accompanied by the deafening howls, 3 terrifying auras that made all living things instinctively submit quickly rose from the 3 rocks. Just as the 3 rocks of different colors let out deafening howls, in the forbidden area of a Yushu temple, about 1,000,000 miles away from the osmanthus forest, 3 white-haired elders dressed in green, purple, and white robes suddenly opened their eyes. Something has happened to the 3 molded spirits in the spirit creation space. The white-haired elder dressed in purple robes reminded with a slight change in expression. Sky Sovereign, we must immediately rush to the spirit creation space and protect the 3 molded spirits. The white-haired elder in green robes followed closely behind and suggested. No. Faced with the purple-robed elder's reminder and the green-robed elder's suggestion, the white-robed elder immediately shook his head and rejected it. What? The purple-robed elder immediately asked, unwilling to accept this. Because according to the agreement between the Yushu Temple, the 4 great guardian families, and the 5 great hidden families, before the arrival of the 100 races in the ancient, middle, and recent era, the demigod and martial god realm deities are not allowed to appear in the world, nor are they allowed to interfere in any disputes in the Tianxian continent. Otherwise, the 9 great forces will join forces to eliminate them. At this point, the white-haired old man raised his head and looked towards the south. His tone revealed a trace of admiration and bitterness. Furthermore, in order to reseal the god and demon races from ancient times, the 4 guardian clans only used Emperor Wu's mighty experts. Therefore, the 3 of us cannot bring disaster to the Yushu Temple, nor can we cause any unnecessary trouble for the 3 spirit destroyers. After hearing the reason given by the white-robed old man, the green-robed old man nodded in tacit agreement. However, the purple-robed old man was unwilling to give up and continued to remind him. Sky Sovereign, the 3 molded spirits are treasures that our Yushu Temple has carefully cultivated for nearly 100,000 years. They are also the key to whether the 3 of us can successfully advance to the martial god realm. If anything happens to the 3 molded spirits, then wouldn't our years of hard work be in vain? Without the purple-robed old man's unwilling reminder, the white-robed old man's thoughts changed in the slightest. Furthermore, he directly handed the safety of the 3 molded spirits that guarded the spirit creation space to the 3 sky, earth, and man sovereigns who currently ruled and managed the Yushu Temple. Seeing that the white-robed old man refused to let the 3 demigod false gods take action, the purple-robed old man could not help but sigh in the end. Inside the spirit creation space, accompanied by deafening howls, the 3 molded spirits that were forcefully sucked into the air began to struggle instinctively. In response, Thowling only sneered. At the same time, he directly mobilized the origin energy of the victor, using the origin energy to stimulate the power of the chaos mark and increase the power of the absorption. As the power of the absorption continued to increase, the struggle of the 3 molded spirits became weaker and weaker. The speed at which they were absorbed became faster and faster. In the end, they successfully fell into the victor. After successfully collecting the 3 molded spirits that were about to advance to the martial god realm, Thowling let out a long sigh of relief. At the same time, he flew towards Howren with a happy smile on his face, intending to explain in more detail the various heaven-defying effects of the molded spirits. However, at this moment, the tear in the void above his head suddenly began to close quickly, and the threatening voice of the earth sovereign sounded. Howren, immediately release the 3 molded spirits. Otherwise, I will let you die without a burial ground. Suddenly raising his head to look at the void crack, Howren discovered that on the other side of the void crack, in addition to the Earth Sovereign of the Yushu Temple and 5 almighty experts who were filled with fierce killing intent, there was also Dongfang Huayun, who was dressed in a white robe and whose 10 fingers were condensed to close the void crack. Lord Amethyst Elder, brother should we charge out now? Pallas, who was holding the hilt of the immortal slaughtering sword, immediately asked with a murderous aura. Ignoring Pallas's questioning, Howren turned his head to look at Thowling's message and asked, Thowling, if you use the possession technique now, what level of opponent can you kill? If you control the physical body, experts below the demigod realm only need one self-created nomological martial technique to kill a first tribulation demigod false god within 3 moves. Without much consideration, Thowling directly gave a domineering reply. If I control the physical body, then I will be invincible below the martial god realm. After hearing Thowling's domineering reply, Howren reminded Pallas with a smile. Brother Chi, we don't need to charge out. We only need to wait for the enemy to come knocking on our door. 2 days ago, when Zhongli Shuiqin led Wu Zhengjun out of the prince's mansion, she had explained to him in detail some of the secrets of the Tianxian continent. This included the agreement between the 4 great guardian families, the 5 great hidden families, and the 7 great sects. Therefore, in the face of the predicament of the Yushu Temple not being able to send out demigod realm experts, and in the face of his ability to kill all experts below the demigod realm with 1 move through the possession technique, he now wished that the earthly venerable realm could send a large number of Emperor Wu realm experts into the spirit-sculpted space. In this way, he could not only eliminate the endless resentment accumulated in his previous and current lives, but also greatly weaken the strength of the Yushu Temple. However, the only thing that made him feel very uncomfortable was that Dongfang Huayun had become an accomplice of the Yushu Temple. This made him vaguely regret leaving behind the formation jade scroll that could help her improve her formation skills. In the sea of osmanthus trees, just as the crack in the bronze mirror that was forcefully torn by Thowling completely closed and returned to its original state, Dongfang Huayun stopped forming seals. A trace of sadness and loneliness flashed across her eyes as she reminded him in a frosty voice. Earthly venerable realm, now you should believe in my sincerity, Dongfang Huayun. Chapter 1688. In the sea of osmanthus trees. Looking up at the smiling terrestrial venerable, Dongfang Huayun thought of Howren, who had been sealed in the soul, sculpting space again. Her heart was filled with self-blame and guilt, and her eyes were filled with endless hatred as she questioned him. Terrestrial venerable, shouldn't you hand over my younger brother and sister now? Miss Huayun, if you don't have something on me, I'm worried that you'll secretly help Howren and harm the Yushu Temple. Ignoring Dongfang Huayun's hate-filled gaze, the terrestrial venerable reminded her with a cold smile. After all, your close relationship with Howren is known by everyone in the Tianxian continent. Terrestrial venerable, I, Dongfang Huayun, swear by the rules of heavenly Tao that as long as you hand over my younger brother and sister, I'll help you with all my heart. The terrestrial venerable's categorical refusal made Dongfang Huayun furious. She couldn't help but beg him with the oath. However, the terrestrial venerable still shook his head and refused. However, the terrestrial venerable also understood that if he wanted Dongfang Huayun to help him with all her strength, he had to let her see a glimmer of hope. Therefore, he nodded to an Emperor Wu Peak Level 9 expert behind him. After that, the Emperor Wu Peak Level 9 expert immediately rose into the air and left the sea of osmanthus trees. In less than a minute, the Emperor Wu Peak Level 9 expert who had left the sea of osmanthus trees returned behind the terrestrial venerable, carrying an unconscious young man in each hand. Miss Huayun, as long as you can reopen the sky-covering seal formation and send the 5 Emperor Wu Peak Level 9 experts into the soul sculpting space, you can safely take your younger brother and sister out of here. The terrestrial venerable promised with a smile after reaching out to take the pair of young men from the hands of the almighty expert. Terrestrial venerable, I hope you can keep your promise. Dongfang Huayun gritted her teeth and warned him when she saw that the pair of young men in the hands of the terrestrial venerable were breathing steadily and had not suffered any injuries. Then, she turned around and looked at Yu Haoran, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground in the bronze mirror. Her heart was filled with guilt as she blamed herself. Yu Shixiang, in order to save my younger brother and sister, I can only let you down. After blaming herself, Dongfang Huayun also sat cross-legged. She started studying the seal formation provided by the terrestrial venerable. Breaking through to the realm of Formation Emperor seemed to have completely unlocked Dongfang Huayun's ancestral talent in Formation Dao. Her cultivation, Dongfang Huaifang Huaifang, was Emperor Wu Huaifang, Huaifang Huaifang, Huaifang Huaifang, Huaifang Huaifang, of Huaifang Huailing. In less than 2 hours, Dongfang Huayun had completely grasped the essence of the sky-shrouding seal formation. Prepare 9 godly realm formation flags for me. Dongfang Huayun put away the jade slip that recorded the sky-shrouding seal formation and stood up. He turned around and ordered the earthly venerable. Here, the earthly venerable, who was already prepared, immediately took out 9 palm-sized array flags and handed them to Dongfang Huayun. After receiving the formation flags from the terrestrial venerable, Dongfang Huayun rose into the air. She inserted the formation flags into the positions where the formation flags had been placed by Thaling. Dongfang Huayun returned to the bronze mirror. She glanced at Yu Haoran, who was immersed in cultivation. The tenderness in her eyes was replaced by determination. She immediately began to quickly form seals with her fingers. After the 9 seals were integrated into the bronze mirror, Dongfang Huayun took out 10 blank jade slips from her storage ring. She then used her divine thought and the seals to set up a transmission formation in the jade slips. 20 minutes later, Dongfang Huayun, who had finished condensing the seals, said to the terrestrial venerable with a slightly pale face, "Out of the 10 jade slips, 5 can enter the spirit-sculpted space, and 5 can leave the spirit-sculpted space. Give it to me." The terrestrial venerable immediately reached out excitedly. She did not use the Thaling to tear the void apart and maintain the void crack to enter the spirit-sculpted space. She was worried that Yu Haoran would use the void crack to escape. She was also worried that the 5 powerful experts who killed Yu Haoran would not be able to leave the spirit-sculpted space if something went wrong with the void crack. Now, she could freely enter and exit the spirit-sculpted space without the need to open the seal formation flags. How could the terrestrial venerable not be excited? Hand over the person. Hand over the jade slip. Dongfang Huayun did not hand over the jade slip in the face of the terrestrial venerable's request. She only reminded him with a cold smile. Faced with Dongfang Huayun's request, the terrestrial venerable hesitated for a moment. He did not know whether to refuse or agree. However, at this moment, the powerful expert behind him used divine thought to remind him. Terrestrial venerable, I have secretly used the demonic path soul-severing mystic technique. I can use the safety of this pair of young people to threaten Dongfang Huayun at any time. All right. After hearing his subordinate's divine thought, the terrestrial venerable could not help but secretly rejoice in his heart. However, he still pretended to be extremely unwilling and agreed while gritting his teeth. Then he directly threw the pair of young people in his hand to Dongfang Huayun. After throwing out the 10 jade slips in his hand and reaching out to catch the pair of young people, Dongfang Huayan quickly took out a top-level escape talisman. After instantly activating the escape talisman's teleportation energy, he disappeared into the sea of osmanthus trees. Immediately enter the spirit-sculpted space, kill Yu Haoran, and take back the 3 molded spirits. Using origin energy to send the 10 jade slips to his 5 subordinates who were at the peak of the 9th grade, the terrestrial venerable ordered with a murderous aura. Yes, sir. After the 5 powerhouses cupped their hands in response, they directly activated the jade slips in their hands and disappeared in front of the terrestrial venerable. Inside the spirit-sculpted space, considering that Dongfang Huayan had just advanced to the realm of Formation Emperor, it would probably take a very long time for him to reopen the seal that covered the sky. Therefore, Yu Haoran did not waste time waiting. After indicating for Thaling to bring the real victor back into the sea of consciousness, he directly sat down cross-legged and began to use the ancient divine demon's black and white wings to raise his realm and strength. However, considering that the terrestrial venerable and the others could observe the scene in the spirit-sculpted space at any time, Yu Haoran directly controlled the yin-yang mystical fire into the storage ring that contained the black and white wings. Through this method, he could devour the remaining divine demon's power of the black and white wings. As the yin-yang mystical fire began to devour the black and white wings of Wu Zun and Emperor Wu, and continued to separate the flames that contained pure energy, his mental state cultivation, physical grade, origin energy, and soul power began to rapidly rise. Emperor Wu was at the beginning of the 4th grade. Emperor Wu was at the middle of the 4th grade. Emperor Wu was at the peak of the 4th grade. Emperor Wu was at the peak of the 4th grade. Chapter 1689. In the spirit-sculpted space. Fortunately, the second doppelganger, who knew the reason why the original body's realm had advanced by leaps and bounds, stopped Thaling from asking the original body in time and took the initiative to explain in detail for the original body. It's an opportunity. Thaling could not help but exclaim when he heard that the 2 original energies left behind by the yin-yang heavenly fire could help rapidly increase Yu Haoran's realm and strength by devouring the black and white wings of the ancient god and demon clans. However, just as he exclaimed, Thaling, who had unexpectedly sensed the fluctuation of the transmission power, quickly mobilized his 3rd tribulation demigod divine, thought to lock onto the specific location of the transmission power, and immediately reminded Yu Haoran, who was planning to continue to break through to the next realm. Thaling directly used the possession technique. Without any hesitation, Yu Haoran quickly withdrew the yin-yang heavenly fire and stood up to instruct Thaling in his sea of consciousness. Got it. After nodding in response, Thaling immediately began to use the possession technique. Yu Haoran, give me your life. As Dongfang Huayan was only a formation master at the advanced stage of the Formation Emperor realm, and the transmission jade slip was hastily refined, the jade slip could not accurately teleport to the correct location. Therefore, the 5 powerful experts who had entered the spirit-sculpted space at the same time appeared in different locations in the space. And one of the powerful experts who appeared at the edge of the seal formation was 100,000 miles away from the valley where Yu Haoran was. However, one of the unlucky fellows happened to appear in the valley where Yu Haoran was. Flourishing End. Without any hesitation, Yu Haoran directly raised his hand toward the powerful expert who had appeared in the valley and used the law martial technique created by Thaling. Although Yu Haoran had the strength of Emperor Wu, his own cultivation was still at the peak of the martial venerable realm. Therefore, in the face of the law martial technique, Emperor Wu, who was at the peak of the level 9 realm, did not care at all. He clenched his fists and rushed over. However, when the power of Flourishing End's law martial technique quickly merged into his body and began to rapidly reduce his lifespan, Emperor Wu, a peak rank 9 powerhouse, could not help but change his expression. Although it was said that a powerhouse at the Emperor Wu realm had a lifespan of 10,000 years, breaking through to the Emperor Wu realm and using a secret technique to hibernate had consumed nearly half of his lifespan. Therefore, when the life force in his body was rapidly draining away, he completely panicked. At the same time, the second Emperor Wu, who was at the peak of level 9, who was very close to the valley, rushed over quickly. Prosperity is coming to an end. Without any hesitation, Yu Haoran extended his finger and continued to perform the law martial technique. Just like the first almighty powerhouse who was facing Yu Haoran, who was only a peak martial venerate, the other party did not pay any attention to the nomological martial technique that was shooting at him. Instead, he continued to charge at Yu Haoran. When he also felt the life force in his body rapidly depleting, he was stunned on the spot like the first almighty expert. The third and fourth Emperor Wu, who were at the peak of level 9, rushed into the valley at the same time. When they saw their companions rapidly aging, the fear in their hearts instantly made them instinctively turn around and want to escape the valley. However, in the face of Yu Haoran, who had always wanted to use this opportunity to weaken the strength of the Yushu Temple, how could he let the other party escape so easily? The fast and flashing power of the four laws allowed him to appear behind the two Emperor Wu, who were at the peak of level 9, in an instant. He pointed his finger consecutively, which meant that he had performed the flourishing In's law martial technique twice at the same time. Just like the two almighty powerhouses in the center of the valley, the third and fourth Emperor Wu, who were at the peak of level 9, also felt the rapid loss of their own life force. They also stood in place with a dull expression because of the fear that emerged in their hearts. However, when the last Emperor Wu, who was at the peak of level 9, who was rushing over, saw the accelerated change in his four companions, the panic that emerged in his heart made him immediately activate the transmission jade slip in his hand and disappear into the space of the molded spirit. Damn it! Yu Haoran, who had already risen into the air, couldn't help but curse angrily when he saw the other party disappear into the space of the molded spirit. Yu Haoran immediately returned to the valley and carefully searched the bodies of the four people to see if there are any similar transmission jade slips. Just as Yu Haoran was feeling extremely angry, Thowling in the sea of consciousness reminded him with a solemn expression. Returning to the valley in a flash, Yu Haoran quickly found 4 identical jade slips from the bodies of the 4 Emperor Wu, who were at the peak of level 9, and then sent them to Thowling in the center of the sea of consciousness. Monster! This is the real monster in the cultivation of the array Tao. Thowling couldn't help but exclaim as he carefully felt the transmission formation set up in the jade slips and the imprint connected to the molded spirit space. Thowling, who are you talking about? Ignoring the 4 completely dried corpses, Yu Haoran looked up at the void where Thowling had entered the space of the molded spirit and asked subconsciously, Dongfang Huaiyun. Thowling's eyes were full of emotion as he replied, What? Thowling suddenly mentioned Dongfang Huaiyun, interrupting Yu Haoran's thoughts of provoking the earthly venerable, and asked with a rather puzzled expression, Yu Haoran, the transmission jade slip that allows you to enter and leave the molded spirit space was just refined by that little girl, Dongfang Huaiyun. Thowling explained with endless emotion as he sent out a transmission jade slip. After reaching out to take the jade slip from Thowling, Yu Haoran sensed it a little and then used his sensitive sense of smell to confirm it. His face instantly darkened. Even if his rejection of her feelings made her feel very dissatisfied and angry, she could have directly questioned him why he chose to help the earthly venerable of the Yushu Temple and use the Yushu Temple's powerful experts to take revenge on him. Could it be that his leaving without saying goodbye had made her so angry and resentful? If that was the case, then their previous feelings would be cut in half, and when they met, they would be enemies who would fight to the death. Thinking of this, Yu Haoran directly threw the transmission jade slip in his hand to Palace, and then asked Thowling for another transmission jade slip. With the help of the transmission jade slip, he left the molded spirit space. Looking at the empty osmanthus forest and the messy footprints left on the ground in front of him, Yu Haoran knew that the earthly venerable, whose plan had failed, had already escaped the osmanthus forest in advance. Thinking of the terrifying strength hidden in the Yushu temple that Zhongli Shueqin had mentioned, he immediately extinguished the idea of chasing after the earthly venerable. However, when he thought of how Dongfang Huayun had not only resealed the crack in the molded spirit space that Thowling had torn, but also personally refined 10 transmission jade slips for the Yushu temple that could freely enter and exit the molded spirit space, the anger in his heart made him finally make a decision that could be called a prodigal. He took out a blank jade slip and a location transmission talisman from his storage ring, and then used his divine sense to leave a trace of soul power and a sentence in the blank jade slip. Dongfang Huayun, I will wait for you at the prince's mansion in Xianyang City, waiting for you to give me a reasonable explanation. Immediately after, he directly activated the energy of the location transmission talisman and let the location transmission talisman send the jade slip to the Dongfang family mansion in the eastern region's Chuyang Peak. Brother Qi, let's go back to the prince's mansion. Looking at the jade slip disappearing before his eyes, Yu Haoran raised his head and looked to the east, his eyes revealing a look of anticipation. Then he took a deep breath, turned his head to Remind Palace, and directly tore through the void of the osmanthus forest and stepped into the void crack. Palace also turned his head to look to the east of the osmanthus forest. Looking at the cloudless void, a trace of doubt appeared in his eyes, not knowing the reason why Yu Haoran looked to the east before leaving. Chapter 1690. Eastern Region, Morning Sun Peak, Dongfang Family Mansion. Dongfang Huayun successfully returned to the family mansion with the help of 5 top-notch escape talismans. After instructing the guards to settle down her brother and sister, who had woken up but were still in a state of shock, she walked towards her own courtyard. However, at this moment, Dongfang Zhixiang rushed over with a jade slip in his hand and asked with a frown on his face, "Yin'er, what happened?" "It's nothing." Dongfang Huayun, who didn't want her father to worry, tried her best to put on a calm expression as she replied, "Don't lie to me." Dongfang Zhixiang's expression instantly darkened as he reprimanded her in a serious tone. "Father, why would I lie to you?" Dongfang Huayun still pretended to be confused as she asked in return. "Our Dongfang family only has 2 location teleportation talismans that have been passed down since the Middle Ages. One is currently stored in the family's secret vault, and the other has already been given to Yu Haoran by you." Dongfang Zhixiang forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and reminded her when he saw that his daughter was still stubbornly hiding things from him. This jade slip in my hand was sent to the family mansion by Yu Haoran using the location teleportation talisman." Dongfang Huayun immediately knew how furious Yu Haoran was when he used the location teleportation talisman that was comparable to a godly item to send over a jade slip. A trace of panic immediately flashed through her eyes. "Yin'er, I know that this jade slip was given to you by Yu Haoran, so I didn't check the contents of the jade slip." Dongfang Zhixiang couldn't bear to see the panic that flashed through his daughter's eyes. After calming his anger, he reminded her in a gentle tone. Dongfang Huayun took a deep breath after receiving the jade slip from her father. She calmed her slightly nervous and panicked emotions, and then used her mind to check the information left behind in the jade slip. But just as her consciousness entered the jade slip space, the jade slip in her hand suddenly shattered. Then, a trace of soul power quickly condensed into Yu Haoran's body. Looking directly at Dongfang Huayun, whose face was slightly pale and whose eyes were filled with panic, Yu Haoran directly said the words left in the jade slip. "Dongfang Huayun, I will wait for you at the prince's mansion in Xianyang City. I will wait for you to give me a reasonable explanation." After repeating the words left in the jade slip, the body condensed from soul power directly exploded and disappeared in front of Dongfang Huayun and Dongfang Zhixiang. "Yin'er, can you tell me what happened now?" Dongfang Zhixiang could feel the anger in Yu Haoran's voice as he recited the information in the jade slip. This made Dongfang Zhixiang even more worried. As a formation family from the Middle Ages, Although the Dongfang family did not seem to be famous, they had a deep foundation and had spies all over the Tianxian continent. Some time ago, the god and demon clans from the ancient era suddenly descended on the southern region. Everyone knew that it was the experts from the four great guardian families who took action and chased the ancient god and demon back to the place where they were sealed. But Dongfang Zhixiang, who understood the process of the ancient god and demon being sealed, knew very well that the four great guardian families only played a supporting role. The person who really allowed the god and demon clans to continue the bloody war of the ancient era and sealed them in the ancient god trial grounds and demon sealing secret realm was Yu Haoran. He was able to not show any signs of panic when the ancient god and demon clans suddenly descended on his homeland. Furthermore, he was able to quickly find the weakness of the ancient god and demon clans and use it. Yu Haoran's wisdom, means, strangeness, viciousness, and strength made Dongfang Zhixiang admire him. But at the same time, he was filled with fear. In his opinion, the Dongfang family would rather offend the four great guardian families and the five hidden families than offend Yu Haoran, who had a bright future. However, Dongfang Zhixiang knew that his daughter was amenable to persuasion but not coercion. So, he did not use a forceful attitude to pursue the matter. Instead, he kindly pleaded, "Father, I have done something wrong to Yu Shixiao." In the face of Yu Haoran's reminder to suppress his anger, and in the face of his father's kind pleading, Dongfang Huaiyun, who felt extremely flustered, explained in detail how his younger brother and sister had been captured alive, and how he had been threatened by the earthly venerable with a hint of helplessness and fear in his voice. After hearing Dongfang Huaiyun's detailed explanation, Dongfang Zhixiang's body rapidly surged with a strong, murderous aura. He gritted his teeth and roared in a low voice. "Terrestrial venerable, Yushu Temple, how dare you sneak attack and threaten my children? Just you wait. Father, what should I do?" After Dongfang Zhixiang vented his anger by roaring in a low voice, Dongfang Huaiyun immediately asked in a daze, "Silly daughter, you don't have to think too much about this kind of thing. You should immediately rush to the prince's mansion in Xianyang City and explain everything to Yu Haoran face to face." Dongfang Zhixiang knew very well why Dongfang Huaiyun was so flustered when faced with such a simple question. He forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and reminded with a smile, "Immediately head to the prince's mansion in Xianyang City." Dongfang Zhixiang's reminder made Dongfang Huaiyun immediately think of the mistress of the prince's mansion, Qin Lingfei. Then, he thought of Yu Haoran's heartless departure without saying goodbye. The flustered emotions in his heart quickly calmed down. Dongfang Huai lowered his head in deep thought for a while, then raised his head again and said with a cold expression, "If Yu Haoran truly likes me, then I don't need to explain it to him face to face. He will also believe that I had no choice. If Yu Haoran doesn't like me, then what's the point of me explaining it to him face to face?" After leaving behind words that seemed very reasonable, but were actually sad and escaping from reality, Dongfang Huaiyun strode past Dongfang Zhixiang and went straight to the attic in the backyard of the mansion. Looking at Dongfang Huaiyun's rapidly departing figure, Dongfang Zhixiang couldn't help but be stunned. Then, a trace of contemplation appeared in his eyes, and he went straight to the forbidden area in the backyard of the mansion. Xianyang City, Prince's Mansion. Yu Haoran, who was sitting cross-legged in the cultivation room, was carefully listening to Thaling's confession in his sea of consciousness. He was confessing what had happened during the battle with the Void Mirror's weapon spirit, recalling bits and pieces of him and the Bell of Chaos, and confessing the true reason why he had concealed his thoughts. "Thaling, you are not only wrong, but you are gravely wrong." After hearing Thaling's detailed explanation and confession, Yu Haoran's heart immediately surged with infinite tenderness, but his tone was rather harsh as he criticized. As the saying goes, one fence has three stakes, one hero has three helpers. As the Void Mirror's grade and strength are not inferior to yours, and you have the help of the Heaven Refining Pot and the Yellow Blade by your side, you voluntarily gave up the idea of summoning the Xianyuan sword to fight alone. This shows that you are too arrogant. Chapter 1691. In the training room of the prince's mansion, you knew that the soul-fixing fruit of life and death possessed by the void spirit mouse could greatly heal the injuries of your soul and give you more advantages to deal with the void mirror. But you gave up on it because of a moment of impulse. This shows how ignorant you are. The harsher the criticism, the more furious Howard became. In the end, he couldn't help but shout and question at the top of his voice. Thowling, the void mirror's artifact spirit has not only seen me, but also knows that I reincarnated. Even if you don't want to implicate me, you have to face the void mirror, the heaven refining flask, the yellow saber, and the Houtian seal alone. But have you really thought about what would happen if your plan to kill the void mirror failed? Would the artifact spirits of the four innate supreme treasures let go of me, someone who knows their secret? Howard, I'm sorry. Howard's criticism and questioning made Thowling even more aware of the grave mistake he had made. His heart was filled with self-blame and guilt as he solemnly apologized. Howard's hoarse questioning and the tower spirit's solemn apology made the anger in his heart gradually dissipate. He sighed softly and said in a sincere and heartfelt tone, "Thowling, you have been reincarnated with the energy and luck of the demonic god's tomb's self-destruction. You and I are closely connected. It can be said that we are bound together for good or ill. I hope that you and I can be honest with each other in the future. We are bound together for good or ill." When he heard Howard mention this famous saying that had been passed down for thousands of years, Thowling suddenly thought of Zhong Hun Zhong, who had shouldered countless pressures alone but refused to reveal his thoughts to his brothers and sisters. In the end, his brothers and sisters turned against each other, and he had to drag his seriously injured body to the endless void. He nodded in agreement and made his promise. Howard, don't worry. Whether it is now or in the future, I will not hide any secrets." Thowling's promise completely eliminated the last bit of anger in Howard's heart. At the same time, he also showed his sincerity. "Thowling, as long as I can gather all 36 marks of chaos, I will take the initiative to remove the ownership of the Wishful Bell. This will allow the Wishful Bell's artifact spirit to be reborn." The reason he was willing to take out the Rui Bell as a defensive treasure was not only to satisfy Thowling's wish, but also because of the improvement of his strength and the imperceptible improvement of his physique from the corpse of the ancient ancestor Magus Dijon. This made his need for defensive magic tools become weaker and weaker. By the time he gathered all 36 chaotic marks, his cultivation would have probably advanced to the martial god realm. He would have absorbed all the essence contained in Dijon's corpse, so the Rui Bell's defense would no longer be necessary. Howard, I thank you on behalf of Brother Chaos. After getting Howard's promise that he was willing to take out the Rui Bell, Thowling, who was sitting cross-legged in the sea of consciousness, stood up directly and bowed 60 degrees to express his gratitude. Thowling, Howard, still say the same thing. There's no need to be so polite between you and me. After waving his hand to indicate that Thowling did not need to be polite, Howard took out the slightly damaged jade slip. The 2 jade boxes containing the fantasy golden stone and the green leaves, and the elixir bottle containing the extreme cold from the storage ring, and sent them all to Thowling in the sea of consciousness. Thowling, I got these 4 treasures from the secret warehouse of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce. Please help me check them. Nodding, Thowling reached out and took the slightly damaged jade slip. After glancing at it with his powerful divine thought, he immediately made 9 seals with his 10 fingers and merged them into the jade slip. Then, he sent the jade slip back to Howard outside the sea of consciousness and said, I have removed the seal formation hidden in the jade slip. At the same time, there is no danger in the jade slip. You can check the information in the jade slip now. Holding the floating jade slip in front of him, Howard's mind directly entered the jade slip space. Then, his body suddenly shook, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. Howard, what is recorded in the jade slip? Originally, He wanted to check the treasure stored in the elixir bottle, but Yu Haoran's emotions suddenly began to fluctuate violently, which immediately aroused Thaling's strong interest. Hugh. After taking 3 deep breaths and barely suppressing his ecstasy, Yu Haoran still said with some excitement, Thaling, this jade slip records a powerhouse who reached the peak of the Technique Emperor realm in the Technique Dao. His left hand that was tightly holding the elixir bottle suddenly tightened, and Thaling immediately asked nervously, Yu Haoran, what kind of technique did the powerhouse at the peak of the Technique Emperor cultivate in the jade slip? Fushi, the combination of the 8 trigrams and the Book of Changes. Yu Haoran replied truthfully. After hearing Yu Haoran's honest reply, Thaling's eyes flashed with a trace of understanding and sighed. So, is the jade slip of spiritual master Qiu Chuji? Thaling, who is spiritual master Qiu Chuji? Carefully recalling the various experiences of his previous life, Yu Haoran realized that he had never come into contact with or heard of Qiu Chuji's fame, so he could not help but ask. Qiu Chuji, the number 1 powerhouse of the Technique Dao in the near ancient times. He was the only genius who could combine the 8 trigrams and the Book of Changes. He was also the peerless sword cultivator who had the most hope of becoming a martial god. Thaling thought for a moment, then gave a general introduction of Qiu Chuji's origins and strength. Although the near ancient times was the closest period to the present, the information and inheritances left behind were the least. Therefore, even with Thaling's introduction, Yu Haoran did not recall any earth-shattering deeds of Qiu Chuji, so he was not interested in learning more. However, what Yu Haoran and Thaling did not notice, or rather overlooked, was a very important issue, and that was the cultivation of the powerhouse who had made a name for himself in the near ancient times. After carefully putting the jade slip into a storage ring, Yu Haoran saw the pill bottle that Thaling was holding tightly. He thought of the power of the treasure that might be stored in the pill bottle and hurriedly reminded him. Thaling, be careful of the extreme coldness that the treasure in the pill bottle is emitting. Thaling, who had sufficient confidence in his cultivation and strength, did not take Yu Haoran's reminder to heart and directly reached out to open the pill bottle. Immediately after, an extreme coldness erupted from the pill bottle. Not only did it instantly seal Thaling, but also took the opportunity to completely freeze the entire space of his knowledge sea. Fortunately, Thaling relied on his valiant strength to forcibly break free from the extreme coldness. Then he mobilized the origin energy of the original victor and completely sealed the coldness that erupted back into the pill bottle. Chapter 1692. The Prince's Mansion in the Cultivation Room. Thaling, my initial judgment was that it was the fire of the underworld. He could understand Thaling's shock when he learned the true origin of the treasure stored in the pill. Yu Haoran also indirectly told him the reason why he wanted him to check the pill bottle again. But the fire of the underworld is a unique flame creature in the legends. So I wasn't 100% sure, and I didn't dare to take the risk of using the fire of the underworld. After taking a deep breath, Thaling slowly closed his eyes and began to carefully consider the use of the fire of the underworld. After nearly 3 minutes of consideration, Thaling opened his eyes again and asked Yu Haoran, Yu Haoran, do you remember the 2 mysterious experts, one old and one young, that we met at the auction in the Rydok City? Of course, I remember the experts of the ancient underworld clan. As he nodded, Yu Haoran directly took out a token from his storage ring that was engraved with a demon with a pair of wings on its back. It exuded a rich soul power and said, This token that can be used to increase soul power was given to me by that young man. Although Thaling had promised that there was no problem with the evil demon token and that it could be used to increase one's cultivation and strength, Yu Haoran had always maintained a high level of vigilance and had never absorbed the pure soul power transformed by the token. But what he didn't know was that it was precisely because of his overly cautious attitude that he had lost the opportunity to become an emperor or a god in a short period of time. But it was also because of his vigilance that he avoided becoming a puppet of the prince of the underworld in the future. After signaling Yuhauerin to send the evil demon token into the space of the sea of consciousness, Thaling got up and returned to the victor's main body. Then, immobilized the origin energy of the victor and completely sealed the connection between the evil demon token and the young man from the Underworld clan. He began to inspect the overall structure of the evil demon token from beginning to end, as well as the dozens of formations engraved on the token. After confirming the specific structure of the devil token and the concealment formation, Thaling, who had returned to the sea of consciousness, said with a smile, "Yuhauerin, regarding the use of the fire of the underworld, I now have two choices. In the end, you will decide which one to use." "Thaling, you say it." Yuhauerin quickly put away his messy thoughts and gestured with a serious attitude. "The first option is to fuse and refine the devil token with the netherworld fire, and then I will personally refine a defensive soft armor that can reach the divine realm high grade. The second option is to use the divine level dark god sinister baleful formation to divide the fire of the underworld and reduce its power. Then, let the mysterious Een soul fire in Ling Fei's body absorb and refine it. Finally, with the help of the mysterious Een soul fire, it will raise Ling Fei's cultivation and strength. Thaling, if the mysterious Een soul fire refines all the fire of the underworld in the elixir bottle, then what grade can it be promoted to? How much benefit can Ling Fei get from it?" For Thaling's proposal to use the fire of the underworld and the devil token to refine the divine realm high-grade defensive soft armor, Yuhauerin directly rejected it without even thinking about it. He also asked about the final effect of the fire of the underworld on Qin Ling Fei. If all the fire of the underworld stored in the elixir bottle is refined, then the mysterious Een soul fire can be promoted to the mysterious Een soul fire of the divine level. And that girl Ling Fei also has a very high chance of breaking through to the martial god realm and becoming an immortal god. Without asking about the defensive power of the divine realm high-grade soft armor, but directly asking about the effect of the fire of the underworld on Qin Ling Fei, Thaling already knew that Yuhauerin had made the final choice. "Thaling, then I'll have to trouble you to set up the mysterious Een soul fire formation, and then divide out the fire of the underworld that is suitable for the mysterious Een soul fire to absorb and refine. It has a great chance to break through the martial god realm and become an immortal god, and then it will accompany me forever." Thaling's introduction of the fire of the underworld made Yuhauerin feel wild with joy, and he hurriedly exhorted, "I got it." After nodding his head, Thaling directly sent the elixir bottle containing the fire of the underworld into the victor, and then reached for the jade box containing the fantasy golden stone. Thinking of the sharp light contained in the fantasy golden stone, which had the power to injure a demigod expert, Yuhauerin hurriedly reminded him again. "Thaling, the jade box contains the fantasy golden stone that contains the origin of gold, and it can burst out a golden light that can injure the divine soul. You have to be careful." Thaling's left hand, which was pressing on the jade box, paused for a moment. Looking at Yuhauerin through the barrier of the sea of consciousness, a look of excitement gradually appeared in his eyes. Obviously, he already knew the origin of the treasure in the jade box, but he deliberately sent it to him. How could he not know the meaning of Yuhauerin's actions? Thinking of the situation where they completely broke off, Yuhauerin still did not forget the promise he made to him. He did his best to collect the origin energy of the 5 elements that could reconstruct his physical body. Thinking of how he had selfishly taken over the plain green lotus tribe, the 6 divine sea-suppressing pearls, the celestial ending sword, and the corpse of the divine dragon, the self-blame and guilt that had been eliminated with great difficulty surged into his heart once again. "Yuhauerin, thank you." Tightly pressing on the jade box containing the fantasy golden stone, Thaling tried his best to control his excitement. After thanking him, he also decided to use his best ability to help Yuhauerin raise his cultivation and strength as soon as possible. "Okay, hurry up and check the treasure in the other jade box." Waving his hand, Yuhauerin hurriedly urged. His divine thoughts directly penetrated the defense of the jade box. After confirming that the origin of gold contained in the fantasy golden stone could meet the energy needed to reconstruct his physical body, Thowling directly opened the jade box containing the green leaf after sending the jade box to Victor. After seeing the green leaf placed in the jade box, Thowling was a little stunned. Then, he nervously asked Yuhauran, "Yuhauran, you didn't show the leaf in the jade box to Zhongli Shuai-Qin, did you?" "No. Miss Shuai-Qin left the prince's mansion with Zheng Jun 3 days ago." After shaking his head and explaining, Yuhauran asked in confusion, "Thowling, what does this leaf have to do with Miss Shuai-Qin?" "Huh." After closing the jade box, the tower spirit first laughed proudly a few times, then explained with a hint of schadenfreude in its tone. "Yuhauran, this leaf is one of the few leaves of the ancestor of the Zhongli family, the supreme evergreen. The leaf not only contains a trace of the supreme evergreen's cultivation comprehension, but also can summon his shadow through this leaf to deal with unavoidable dangers." Sizzle. After hearing Thowling's introduction of the leaf in the jade box, Yuhauran couldn't help but gasp. At the same time, he couldn't help but ask with some doubts in his heart. Chapter 1693. In the training room of the prince's mansion, Supremes can explore the mysteries of heaven and earth, trace back to the origin of life, and refine the thousands of laws in the world for their own use. Since he had decided not to hide any secrets, Thowling didn't find excuses to postpone it like before when it came to the secrets of Supremes. Therefore, the power used by utmost saints is no longer as simple as origin energy and soul energy. Instead, it is an even higher level of divine energy. Yuhauran, with your current cultivation and strength, you can't sense the remnant divine power in the leaf for the time being. Not to mention the Supreme Being realm, even the martial God realm, which was immortal and immortal, was still far from it. Therefore, Yuhauran wasn't interested in the cultivation methods of Supreme Being experts. What he really wanted to know now was how he could obtain the cultivation insights left behind by Supreme Being Evergreen in the leaf. When you're able to refine the power of laws that you've comprehended and become an immortal martial god, you'll be able to obtain the cultivation insights that the Evergreen Prime left behind in the leaf, the tower spirit reminded him with a smile. He then took out the green lotus flag and the shrunken Shenlong corpse from the victor and gestured to Yuhauran. "Yuhauran, use the green lotus flag for self-defense. Use the Shenlong corpse to increase Ao Tion's cultivation and strength." Yuhauran shook his head and reminded Thowling when he saw the green lotus flag and Shenlong corpse sent out by Thowling. "Thowling, give the green lotus flag to the second clone. Together with the floating flame flag he just obtained, he'll be able to better display the supreme defense of the Five Elements flag. As for the Shenlong corpse, Ao Tion, who has obtained an opportunity, won't be able to use it anymore." After the reminder, Yuhauran's consciousness left the space of his sea of consciousness. Then, he took out the slightly damaged jade slip and began to cultivate the comprehension of Formula Tao recorded in the jade slip. After hearing Yuhauran mention the floating flame flag of the Five Element flags, Thowling suddenly felt that something was wrong. He couldn't help but frown and think carefully. She had been separated from Yuhauran for less than a month. In such a short period of time, he had obtained the immortal slaughtering sword and immortal trapping sword of the four immortal slaying swords, the floating flame flag of the Five Elements flags, the fire of the underworld that had reached the divine realm, the phantasmal metal stone that contained the origin of metal, the leaf of the eternal green supremacy, and the black and white wings of the primordial fiend god that could increase one's realm and strength without limit. Even though Yuhauran was the son of destiny and was protected by the providence of heaven and earth, his providence far surpassed that of ordinary monstrous geniuses. However, he shouldn't have obtained so many heaven-defying opportunities in such a short period of time. However, things that shouldn't have happened had already happened. This meant that the situation and providence of heaven and earth must have changed. Otherwise, there was no way to explain what had happened to Yuhauran. Thinking of this, Thowling instantly returned to the room at the top of Victor's pagoda. He sat cross-legged on the jade bed, and then mobilized the 32 chaotic imprints that his main body possessed. He began to check the changes in the situation and providence of heaven and earth. In the Hungduan mountain range, about 7,000 miles away from Xianyang City, the peaceful void of the mountain range was suddenly torn apart by a powerful force. Then, a fox about half a meter tall walked out of the tear in the void. It was green all over and had a cunning and sinister look in its eyes. After leaving the torn void, the cyan fox carefully observed the terrain of the Hungduan mountain range. Finally, its gaze stopped at the cave where the 7th grade black lotus had appeared. In a flash, the cyan fox appeared in front of the cave entrance. It lowered its head to look at the pitch-black cave entrance and muttered to itself. According to the family's records, when the ancient 9 supreme divine beast kings decided to exterminate the ancient witches tribe, in order to prevent the ancient witches tribe from failing the mission and being attacked by the ancient witch and the 100 primordial tribes, they used the cosmic stars formation of the 3 great sealing formations to seal almost a quarter of the primordial demon tribe's elites in the Azure Mystic realm. Now that the primordial god and demon tribe have temporarily reappeared, it should be time for the primordial demon tribe to descend upon the Tianxian continent. If the Green Hill Fox clan can obtain the support of the demon tribe in the Azure Mystic realm, it will be easy for us to restore the glory of the Middle Ages. After muttering to itself, the cyan fox retreated a few thousand meters in a flash. Then its body began to rise rapidly. Along with the rapid rise of its body, 9 huge, furry green fox tails quickly extended from the green fox's tail. 9 cyan fox tails meant that the cyan fox in the midst of its transformation possessed the strength of the great emperor realm. It didn't take long for the cyan fox, which was originally about half a meter tall, to turn into a giant beast that was over 1,000 meters tall and exuded a terrifying aura. After completing its transformation, the 9-tailed cyan fox waved its 9 huge tails that were longer than its body and smashed them at the cave entrance. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening roar, the cave entrance, which was originally less than 10 meters in diameter, quickly turned into a huge crater that was over 1,000 meters in diameter under the continuous bombardment of the cyan fox's 9 huge tails. The Hungduan Mountains were only about 7,000 miles away from Xianyang City. The loud roar caused by the 9-tailed cyan fox using its 9 huge tails to smash at the cave entrance quickly alerted Yu Haoran, who was cultivating in the prince's mansion. After finishing his cultivation of Formula Dao, Yu Haoran left the prince's mansion in a flash. He then used Emperor Wu's powerful divine will, which was at the peak of the 4th grade, to trace the source of the roar. Get out of my way if you don't want to die. Just as Yu Haoran's divine will arrived at the Hungduan Mountains, the 9-tailed cyan fox's sinister gaze locked onto his divine will and threatened him with a murderous aura. Yu Haoran knew that before he officially broke through Emperor Wu's realm, he was still no match for the 9-tailed cyan fox. Therefore, he didn't continue to provoke the other party and immediately withdrew his divine will. Peak of the 7th grade, Great Emperor Realm. Thowling, who was in the room at the top of the Victor Pagoda, was refining the formation flags that could reseal the ancient Fiend God formation. At first, he didn't hear the roar from the Hungduan Mountains. It wasn't until Yu Haoran suddenly left the prince's mansion and used his divine will to trace the source of the roar that he realized something was wrong. He quickly left the Victor Pagoda and began to use his powerful divine will as a 3rd tribulation demigod to investigate. Therefore, when Yu Haoran had to withdraw his divine will because he was afraid of the 9-tailed cyan fox's powerful strength, Thowling reminded him in a relaxed tone. Chapter 1694. On top of the prince's mansion, although he was still no match for Emperor Wu's peak 7th rank 9-tailed cyan fox, he could still put up a fight if he used the immortal trapping sword at full power. Moreover, he had Pallas, who was just as strong as him and also had the immortal culling sword to boost his strength. Therefore, Yuhauran didn't plan to rely on Thaling's possession technique. Instead, he planned to join forces with Pallas and have a good fight with the nine-tailed cyan fox. That would be the official start of the expedition to exterminate the Green Hill foxes. Coming, Pallas replied and rushed out of the prince's mansion excitedly with the immortal culling sword in hand. Brother Chi, are you afraid of a peak 7th rank Great Emperor nine-tailed cyan fox? Yuhauran asked with a chuckle. Brother Yu, I'm not even afraid of a nine-tailed Arctic fox at the peak of the 7th rank of the Great Emperor realm, let alone a trashy cyan fox. Shaking its ugly head, the Scarlet Loathe replied with a sinister smile. Let's go. After receiving the Scarlet Loathing Beast's arrogant reply, Yuhauran, who was similarly filled with lofty sentiments, clenched the celestial trapping sword and reminded it before heading straight for the Hungwan mountain range that was thousands of miles away. Heaven's severing. Since the 4 immortal slaying swords combined into a supreme artifact, it was far beyond the control and influence of Sword Dao Fate. At the same time, considering that his cultivation hadn't reached the martial god realm, he still needed to rely on the immortal slaying sword and immortal culling sword's powerful attacks. Therefore, Yuhauran also took some time out to practice the heaven-punishing sword art of universal slaughter that the heaven-punishing demon emperor had passed down to him. Heaven's severing. Although the Scarlet Loathe looked down on the cyan fox with a lowly bloodline, the Scarlet Loathe was very serious when it came to dealing with a peak 7th rank martial emperor like the nine-tailed cyan fox. It even used its best sword technique. Whether it was Yuhauran who used the power of the 4 laws of speed and flash, or Pallas who was naturally good at extreme speed, the speed at which they reached the Hungwan Mountains and attacked was too fast. It was only when the attacks of the immortal trapping sword and the immortal slaughtering sword were completely formed that the nine-tailed green fox, who was attacking the cave entrance with all her strength, finally noticed. When it sensed the devastating power contained within the 2 streaks of sword chi, it was already too late to summon a defensive magic treasure. It could only take the risk of brandishing its 9 tails to block and counterattack. The sound of 6 items being severed rang out. Yuhauran used the sword chi of the immortal trapping sword to sever the 6 tails of the green nine-tailed fox. Just when Yuhauran cut off the 6 tails of the nine-tailed green fox, Pallas used his sword technique to cut off the remaining 3 tails. The sword chi, which had only used half of its power, hit the chest of the nine-tailed green fox heavily and almost cut it in half. Mount Tai, crushing down, seeing that the nine-tailed green fox was severely injured in an instant and its aura had dropped to the early 1st rank of the Supreme Realm, Yuhauran, who had just caught his breath, continued to wield the immortal trapping sword and used a basic sword technique to cut the wound of the green fox. Together with its body and divine soul, the nine-tailed green fox didn't even have a chance to counterattack before it died with a whimper. Slowly landing beside the corpse of the nine-tailed green fox, Yuhauran and Pallas looked very excited. After all, the nine-tailed green fox was the first martial Emperor Realm expert that they had killed since they had the strength and realm of Emperor Wu. Moreover, the nine-tailed green fox was a top expert who had reached the peak of the 7th rank of the Supreme Realm. How could they not be excited? In response, Thaling didn't say much. He just looked at them with a gratified smile in his eyes. This was because he knew that Yuhauran and Pallas needed this kind of excitement to speed up their cultivation. After looking away from Yuhauran, Thaling looked at the deep pit that was created by the nine-tailed green fox. The smile in his eyes was immediately replaced by shock. Then he directly mobilized all of his divine thought of the 3rd tribulation demigod to carefully examine the deep pit and the bottom of the pit that was about 10,000 meters deep. The complete version of the heavenly cycle star's sealing formation. After a careful examination, Thaling confirmed that the sealing formation hidden in the depths of the deep pit was the heavenly cycle star sealing formation that was as famous as the heavenly cycle star sealing formation as the heavenly cycle star sealing formation. His expression gradually turned serious as he instructed Yuhauran. Yuhauran, calm down and calm your emotions. Thowling, what's wrong? After taking a deep breath and quickly calming his excited emotions, Howard looked at the deep pit that was created by the nine-tailed green fox while interrogating Thowling. Howard, I'm going to tell you a cruel reality. I hope you're mentally prepared. Although the god race and the demon race didn't bring any harm to the Tianxian continent when they appeared in the ancient times, Thowling knew very well how much pressure Howard, as the prince consort of the great Emperor Qing Kingdom, was under. If it wasn't for the fact that he was constantly being hunted down in his previous life, which made his mind go through countless trials and tribulations, his perseverance and endurance far exceeded that of the top monstrous geniuses. If it wasn't for the promise and guarantee he made in this life, he would have taken the prince's mansion far away from Xianyang City and the southern region to hide from the ancient god race and the demon race that descended in the southern region. However, the appearance of the ancient god race and the demon race paled in comparison to the secret hidden in the deep pit. Therefore, he was a little worried that Howard would ultimately not be able to withstand the pressure of being in a deep sleep and make the decision to escape from the southern region. This would destroy his profound Tao heart and affect his exuberant fortune. Thowling, tell me, Howard had personally experienced the cruel events of the ancient god race and the demon race descending on the Tianxian continent. He didn't believe that there was a more cruel reality in this world. In the ancient times, when the 9 supreme divine beast kings decided to have the final battle with the ancient witch ancestor, they used the heavenly cycle star formation to seal more than a quarter of the demon race in order to prevent the counterattack of the ancient witch ancestor and the ancient 100 tribes after they lost the battle. Among them, most of them were Emperor Realm and God Realm experts, peerless and monstrous elites. Thowling reminded Howard with a solemn expression as he gestured for him to use his divine thought to check the formation flag embroidered with stars at the bottom of the 10,000-meter deep pit. Howard, the star embroidered on the formation flag is called the Sun Rat of Emptiness. It's the flag formation used to set up the heavenly cycle star formation seal. Chapter 1695. In front of the deep pit in the Hungduan Mountains. Howard, are you all right? Thowling asked worriedly as she looked at Howard, who had suddenly become silent and was sitting alone at the edge of the deep pit. Thowling, I'm fine. After forcefully squeezing out a smile that was uglier than crying, Howard looked at the deep pit in front of him with a thoughtful look in his eyes. Thowling, how long is it until the ancient demon clan appears? The complete version of the heavenly cycle star seal formation requires a total of 365 star formation flags of the lower class of the god state to be set up. If more than half of the formation flags are destroyed or lose the ability to gather the power of the stars, then the heavenly cycle star seal formation will completely lose its sealing effect. Thowling used his divine thought to check the star formation flags in the deep pit again. After careful calculation, he gave the approximate time of the ancient demon clan's appearance. Just now, I have used my divine thought to check the seal formation inside the deep pit and found that the number of formation flags that have been destroyed has reached 100. The number of formation flags that have lost the ability to gather the power of the stars has reached a total of 32 formation flags. There are only 50 formation flags left before the seal of the formation loses its effectiveness. Combining the changes in the situation and fate of the entire Tianxian continent, as well as the continuous attacks of the ancient demon clan in the Qingxian secret realm, I estimate that the seal of the heavenly cycle star seal formation will be completely broken in half a year to 8 months. The shortest was half a year, and the longest was 8 months. After hearing Thowling give the time of the ancient demon clan's appearance, Howard suddenly felt the pressure double. At the same time, he thought of the accumulated hatred between the ancient god and demon clans and the bloody battle that would immediately break out when they met. He could not help but ask with some anticipation. Pagoda spirit, in the ancient times, did the demon clan have any mortal enemies? Yes. Thowling could not help but look at Howard worriedly as he nodded his head in reply. Who? Yu Haoran quickly asked as his expectant gaze was immediately replaced by surprise. Ancient shaman. Although the pagoda spirit knew that the answer would make Yu Haoran feel extremely disappointed, in order to let him accept reality as soon as possible and consider how to deal with the crisis of the ancient demon race in advance, the pagoda spirit ultimately chose to answer truthfully. His surprised expression was immediately replaced by disappointment, which then turned into a solemn expression. The reason why the demon race in ancient times lost its ruling position and was almost exterminated was because of the bloody war between the demon race and the ancient witch race. The accumulated hatred between the demon race and the demon race in ancient times had far surpassed the hatred between the demon race and the demon race in ancient times. At the same time, in the cave residence left by Qing Lian, when receiving the gift of the supreme skeleton, Dijiang, one of the 12 strongest ancestral sorcerers in ancient times, had said that except for a young which was sealed in advance to continue the bloodline of the ancestral sorcerers, the rest of the ancestral sorcerers had died. In other words, when the ancient demon clan descended upon the Tianxin continent and discovered that he was the only ancestral wizard who possessed a pure bloodline, he was afraid that they would immediately pursue him endlessly. Although Yu Haoran was not very clear about the exact number of the demon clan in ancient times, judging from the exotic beasts in different regions of the Tianxin continent, a quarter of the demon clan in ancient times was probably more than hundreds of millions. Moreover, most of the hundreds of millions of ancient demon clan were terrifying great demons of the venerable realm, emperor realm, and god realm. Yu Haoran's gloomy expression was finally replaced by a bitter smile when he thought about how he was surrounded by an endless horde of terrifying greater demons and how he was unable to fight against so many enemies with his two fists. He knew that even if his cultivation had advanced to the martial god realm, he would not be able to face such a large number of ancient demon clan. He could only hope that he could once again delay the appearance of the ancient demon clan, or even prevent them from ever descending upon the Tianxin continent. Faling, can you deal with the ancient demon race in the same way that you sealed the ancient demon race and the demon race again? No. Faling shook his head in reply, directly shattering the last ray of hope in Yu Haoran's heart. Yu Haoran, the heavenly cycle star formation seal requires too many god realm low-grade formation flags. There's definitely not enough time to refine them. Moreover, many of the materials required to refine the formation flags are extremely precious and rare. It's impossible to gather all of them in a short period of time. Therefore, the appearance of the ancient demon clan is unavoidable. It's also a cruel reality that you must face calmly. Although it was easy for one to break down completely under too much pressure, if the pressure exceeded one's limit, it would be easy to ignite one's fighting spirit. As long as Qin Ling Fei and the sword without trace were properly taken care of before the ancient demon clan descended upon the Tianxin continent, then, even if they were to be hunted down by hundreds of millions of ancient demon clan, so what? The outcome would be nothing more than a fight to the death. Moreover, the emergence of the demon clan in the ancient times was not only a fatal threat to him, but also a serious threat to the survival of the 4 great guardian clans, the 5 great hidden clans, and the 7 great sects. He believed that they would definitely not sit by and do nothing. As the pressure turned into an endless fighting spirit, Yu Haoran's thoughts gradually became active. As he stared at the deep pit in front of him, a crazy and sinister idea suddenly flashed through his mind. Although the ancient demon clan's loss of their ruling position was directly related to the bloody battle of the ancient witch ancestor, they probably did not have any good feelings towards the demon race and the god race who replaced them to rule the ancient continent. With the arrogant characters of the 3 races, as well as their ambition to recreate the glory of the ancient era, they would not tolerate each other's existence. After all, how could they allow others to sleep beside them? If at the moment when the ancient demon clan appeared, he could open the seal of the sun, moon, and stars of the ancient god test field and the demon sealing mystery realm at the same time, allowing the experts of the ancient god race and the demon race to reappear, would there be a fierce conflict between the 3 races? However, The only thing that made Yuhaoran somewhat fearful was that the seal of the sun, moon, and stars that the four great guardian families had paid a great price to set up only lasted for less than a year before completely losing its effect. Would they suspect that he had tampered with the process of setting up the seal of the sun, moon, and stars, thus causing their rage and revenge? At the same time, if he wanted the ancient demon clan, the god race, and the demon race to reappear at the same time, he would need to have absolute control over the seal of the seal. Therefore, Yuhaoran told Thaling the sinister plan he had just thought of in detail, allowing him to decide whether it was feasible or not. Yuhaoran, you don't need to worry that after the seal of the sun, moon, and stars loses its effect, it will arouse the suspicion and anger of the four great guardian families. After hearing Yuhaoran's idea and sinister plan, a look of surprise flashed across Thaling's eyes, and he reminded him with a smile. "What?" Yuhaoran immediately asked, somewhat puzzled. Chapter 1696. In front of the deep pit in the Hungduan mountain range. Because the four great guardian families never really wanted to seal the ancient god and demon clans forever, the formation flags they provided you. After that, Thaling told Yuhaoran in detail about the means the four great guardian families had hidden in the formation flags. Bang! There was actually a self-destructing formation hidden in the 8 formation flags. In 2 to 3 years at most, the sealing formation of the sun, moon, stars would be destroyed. After hearing Thaling's detailed explanation, Yuhaoran, who was instantly filled with endless anger, slammed his fist on the ground and cursed while gnashing his teeth. "Damn the guardian families! How dare they scheme against me? Yuhaoran, in the future, I will definitely use the same method to pay you back hundreds and thousands of times." Yuhaoran, there's no need to be so angry. Seeing Yuhaoran slamming the ground out of extreme anger, Thaling hurriedly comforted him and reminded him with a smile. It's precisely because of the means secretly arranged by the four great guardian families that you can completely rid yourself of the suspicion of the sealing formation of the sun, moon, stars suddenly losing its effectiveness. It's guaranteed that you won't arouse the guardian family's suspicion in the short term, let alone suffer their crazy revenge. Although Thaling's explanation was very reasonable, Yuhaoran, who had never been schemed against like this, was still unable to get rid of the anger in his heart. He quickly thought of the various abilities he possessed and finally thought of a sinister method that could ruthlessly harm the guardian families. However, this sinister method was too risky and could put him in fatal danger at any time. Thaling would definitely not agree to it. Therefore, Yuhaoran planned to wait until he really started to implement this sinister plan, then use a last-minute excuse to inform him. After taking a deep breath and calming his anger, Yuhaoran continued to ask if the plan against the ancient demon clan and the ancient god and demon clan was feasible. "Absolutely no problem," as he nodded to confirm. Thaling also explained his ideas and methods in detail. "Yuhaoran, next I will set up a formation that can fuse auras, completely connecting the sealing auras of the heavenly cycle star formation and the sealing formation of the sun, moon, stars. As long as the heavenly cycle star formation loses its effectiveness, the aura of the sealing formation of the sun, moon, stars will directly activate the self-destruct formation hidden in the 8 low god banner formation. It will definitely allow the ancient demon clan and the ancient god and demon clans to descend upon the Tian continent at the same time." "All right, let's do as you say." As he nodding his agreement with Thaling's plan, "You of the great Qin Empire of Emperor of Qin Empires of Kingdom." Even if his plan could succeed, the ancient demon clan and the ancient god and devil clan would erupt into a bloody battle due to their simultaneous descent into the profound sky continent. However, with the ancient demon clan's overall advantage in numbers, as well as their influence and control over the countless beasts in the Tianxian continent, they would definitely be able to defeat and repel the ancient god and demon clans, and then occupy most of the southern region. The entire southern region was the foundation of the great emperor of Qin Empire, and it was also a powerful supporting force for him to resist the ancient demon clan's pursuit and exterminate the ancient god and demon clans. He definitely could not give up completely. After thinking about it, Yu Haoran knew that he would have to start another campaign against the great emperor of Qin Empire, and his target would be the eastern region, which was connected to the southern region. As long as he could open up a territory in the eastern region and settle down the civil and military officials and elite soldiers of the great emperor of Qin Empire, then he would be able to use all sorts of methods, such as ambushes, harassment, bewitchment, and so on, to reclaim the territory. This way, not only would he be able to maintain the southern region's support for the great emperor of Qin Empire, but at the same time, he would be able to temper himself between life and death and quickly cultivate elite soldiers who could conquer the entire Tianxian continent in the future. There were a total of 3 empires in the Tianxian continent that were as famous as the 7 top sections. They were the great emperor of Qin Empire in the southern region, the Yuan Empire in the western region, and the Great Han Empire in the eastern region. Among the 3 empires, the great emperor of Qin Empire had the widest territory, followed by the Yuan Empire in the western region, and lastly, the Great Han Empire in the eastern region. Among the 3 empires, the Great Han Empire in the eastern region was the strongest, followed by the Yuan Empire in the western region, and lastly, the great emperor of Qin Empire in the southern region. Since he had already decided to wage war against the strongest empire, the Great Han Empire, then increasing the strength of his soldiers was of utmost importance. Therefore, Yu Haoran did not continue to dwell on the pressure brought about by the ancient demon clan's appearance. After bidding farewell to palace, he soared into the sky and headed straight for the palace in Xianyang City. The Qinghu mountain range was located at the border between the southern region and the eastern region. It was a dangerous mountain range with abnormally harsh natural conditions and high-tier beasts roaming freely. It was also a natural barrier that cut off the communication between the southern region and the eastern region. The length of the Qinghu mountain range from the east to the west was more than 100,000 kilometers. The distance between the north and the south was also close to 1,000,000 kilometers. It was difficult for experts who were not martial saints to cross over. In the center of the mountain range, there was a huge lake that was close to 10,000 kilometers wide. This lake was called Qinghu. It was the origin of the name of the Qinghu mountain range and also the true border between the southern region and the eastern region. To the east of Qinghu was the territory of the eastern region, and to the west of Qinghu was the territory of the southern region. On this day, the western shore of Qinghu, which had been peaceful for countless years, was suddenly destroyed by a group of more than 100,000 elite soldiers wearing black iron and star armor. The dense, murderous aura and sharp, killing intent of the 100,000 elite soldiers not only caused countless beasts on the western cliff of Qing who to flee for their lives, but even the powerful beasts of the martial monarch realm and the martial monarch realm had to hide their auras obediently and stay in the cultivation area. They did not dare to provoke the might of the 100,000 elite soldiers. Looking at the 100,000 soldiers of the Four Symbols sect who had fought alongside him and received the help of his elixirs and cultivation resources for the past 2 years, Yu Haoran's eyes were filled with admiration and anticipation. They had become a force that was second only to the Imperial Guards in the great Emperor Qin Kingdom. As the ancient god race and demon race broke the seal and emerged, Emperor Qin gradually realized that the southern region was no longer safe. He had long had the idea of restarting his conquest of the world. However, his idea was slightly different from Yu Haoran's. Emperor Qin's target was the central region. Firstly, the cultivation environment of the central region was far better than that of the southern region. He could use the means of conquest to increase the cultivation and strength of the soldiers, achieving the goal of using war to nurture war. Secondly, there were no kingdoms or empires that had absolute authority in the central region. Most of them were inherited by clans and sects that occupied a region. In this way, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers could besiege a city and take it down without worrying about the enemy's reinforcements. They only needed to temporarily avoid the inherited clans that had existed for more than 1,000,000 years. Thirdly, as the core of the Tianxian continent, the central region not only had abundant spiritual energy and cultivation resources, but the fate of the entire Tianxian continent was also far better than that of the other four regions. Emperor Qin also hoped to occupy the territory of the central region and gather the fate of the central region, using it to increase his own cultivation and strength. Chapter 1697. Qinghu Mountains, in front of the western shore of Qinghu Lake. Although Yu Haoran's cultivation and strength were very strong, and he had extremely high popularity and reputation in the Great Qin Empire, as the dignified monarch who had ruled the Great Qin Empire for dozens of years, he was still a monarch. The Qin Emperor could not allow anyone to challenge his authority as the emperor, nor could he interfere in the formulation of the policy of conquering territories. Only Yu Haoran, whom he valued and trusted the most, could do anything about. If it had been anyone else, they would have been executed by 1,000 cuts long ago. The two continued to argue, neither willing to change their minds. With no other choice, the two could only choose to take a step back. The 100,000 left army that had followed Yu Haoran to conquer the Four Symbols sect officially became the Prince's Mansion's private guards, responsible for expanding the Eastern Territory. Emperor Qin would personally lead the 10 million elite soldiers of the Emperor Qin's kingdom, responsible for conquering the Central Territory. When the time came, the final retreat and direction of defense will be decided based on the results of the battle between the primordial monsters and primordial demons. Emperor's son-in-law. This is the marching record we just compiled. As the first commander of the left army, Han Guangbei, who had been reappointed as the captain of the guards, took a jade slip from one of the elite soldiers and handed it to Yu Haoran respectfully. Report it directly. The jade slip was used to record the daily necessities, consumption, battle results, and casualties of the march. There are all sorts of secret codes in it, and it took a lot of effort to understand them. He didn't want to waste unnecessary energy, nor did he want to waste too much time. Therefore, Yu Haoran didn't take the jade slip from Qian Guangbei's hand. He only gave the order with a calm expression. Emperor's son-in-law. After 5 days and 5 nights of continuous travel, the army advanced a total of 97,635 kilometers. During this time, we killed 3 Emperor-level beasts, 16 Exalt-level beasts, 480 Saint-level beasts, and countless beasts below the Saint level. Han Guangbei read the records in the jade slip and reported in detail. What about the casualties? Yu Haoran couldn't help but frown when he saw Han Guangbei only report the good news like he usually did to the officials of the Ministry of War. He asked with a displeased expression. Seeing a trace of displeasure in the emperor's son-in-law's eyes, Han Guangbei knew something was wrong. He immediately put away his fawning smile and continued to report with a slightly sad expression. 63 martial ancestor-level elite soldiers were heavily injured, and 125 died. Martial King Kiliarch's 9 were heavily injured, and 14 died. 1 Martial Emperor Major was heavily injured and died. 1 died. There were no casualties of any generals and commanders above the Martial Saint level. Han Guangbei, secretly of the Emperor's son-in-law's son-in-law, of the Emperor's son-in-laws, and couldn't help but let of his of the Emperor, of the Emperor of the Emperor, of the Emperor. Since ancient times, the Emperor is of the of's Lord, territory, and the of's people of the God Emperor continent. Moreover, they had entered the Qinghu mountain range, where the environment was extremely harsh and high-grade exotic beasts roamed. As such, the loss of over 200 elite soldiers was still within Yu Haoran's expectations. Maintain your vigilance. Do your best to recover the Yuan Li and Soul Power Yu expended traveling day and night. Yu Haoran sternly ordered after sweeping his gaze across the 100,000 elite soldiers who were in a relatively good state of mind. This subordinate obeys. 100,000 elite soldiers shouted in unison. Not only did the earth tremble, but the high-grade exotic beasts within several hundred kilometers were also frightened. In the end, they had no choice but to temporarily leave their cultivation grounds. When the 100,000 elite soldiers began to recover their strength with the help of spirit stones and pills, Yu Haoran nodded to Lan Rong, Lin Yuanxiang, and the other generals. Yu Haoran walked to a secluded area and asked Lin Yuanxiang, who was in charge of the logistics of the army, "General Lin, have you collected the bodies of the brothers who died?" Lin Yuanxiang hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed as he reported, "It's all thanks to the large number of storage rings that the Emperor's son-in-law gave us. All the bodies of our fallen brothers are stored in the storage rings. Take good care of the storage rings that contain the bodies. In the future, this Emperor's son-in-law will give them a grand funeral and let their families feel proud." Yu Haoran ordered with a heavy expression. This subordinate thanks the Emperor's son-in-law on behalf of the brothers who died in battle. Most of the 100 or so elite soldiers who died in the Qing Hu mountain range were scouts in charge of security. They were General Qi Weixian's subordinates and trusted aides. Therefore, after hearing Yu Haoran's instructions, Qi Weixian immediately knelt on one knee and expressed his gratitude. After waving his hand to signal Qi Weixian to stand up, Yu Haoran ordered Lan Rong, who was still holding the position of Great General. "General Lan, immediately fill up the empty military positions. Don't let it affect the upcoming campaign." "This subordinate obeys," Lan Rong responded, and immediately turned to look for the empty military positions. "All right, you guys go and do your work." After waving his hand to signal Lin Yuanxiang and the others to leave, Yu Haoran turned his head and nodded at Pallas, who was fighting alongside the army. Then, he soared into the sky and headed straight to the center of Qinghu Lake. As the core of the Qinghu mountain range, the Qinghu Lake, which was about 10,000 miles wide, not only contained abundant spiritual qi of heaven and earth, but also housed the most powerful monarch realm and emperor realm beasts in the mountain range. If he wanted the 100,000 elite soldiers of the left army to safely cross the Qinghu Lake and successfully avoid a safe route that could be reached at any time in the future, he had to think of a way to kill the monarch realm and emperor realm beasts in the Qinghu Lake. This way, the beasts below the monarch realm wouldn't dare to act rashly now and in the future. Yu Haoran flew directly to the center of Qinghu Lake with the red loathe beast. Yu Haoran first asked the tower spirit to use the third tribulation demigod's divine sense to thoroughly investigate the strength distribution of the strange beasts in the lake. After confirming that there was no need for Thaling's possession technique and that he and Pallas could deal with the three strongest water-type Emperor Realm beasts in the Qinghu Lake with only the immortal trapping sword and immortal slaughtering sword, Yu Haoran directly took out a pill bottle from his storage ring. Then he poured out 9 pills that emitted a strong stench. Just as Yu Haoran poured out the pills from the pill bottle, Pallas couldn't help but change his expression. At the same time, he immediately sealed his 6 senses and hurriedly turned his head away from the 9 pills. This was because Pallas had personally consumed those pills before. He was all too aware of the fatal temptation that those pills had on beasts. He was even more aware of the serious consequences of consuming those pills. Ignoring the strong stench emitted by the pills, Yu Haoran directly used his yuan li to shatter 6 of the pills. Then he scattered the powder of the pills all over the Qinghu Lake. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.